YouTube. We're opening this box right now. It's gonna be amazing. It's been a little bit since we filmed a video, and so we hope you guys are not actually experiencing an interruption, but we're excited to bring it to you anyway. So here it goes. Oh my goodness, it's an F-15. Amazing, from FMS. 64 millimeters, this is an F-15 V2, which basically means I believe it's just version 2. I don't know if that means it's got a reflex or if it doesn't, but we're gonna find out here in a minute. So let's go ahead and pop this thing out. All right, so there we go. So V2 overall, pleased to announce that that all 64 ducted fans have been upgraded. Okay, inspired by the, okay, great. All right, so V2, it's been upgraded. Can achieve 800 grams of, can achieve more than 800 grams of thrust. That's really good. Need for speed. And also it's in the, looks like a Navy or Air Force livery. And so of course I really like that. And so that's super exciting. Okay, so we're gonna get right into this. We're gonna open this thing up, see how quick we can get it set up. And then we're gonna get ready to hopefully fly it if all goes to plan. So this plane comes in a plug and play finish level, which means that you're gonna have to provide your own transmitter and receiver. And if you're new in the hobby, that's pretty ordinary. For a lot of planes, they either come as a bind and fly, plug and fly, or ARF or kit. So almost ready to fly means kind of like almost not ready to fly because they need a lot of assembly, but they're a lot more ready to fly than a kit where you've got to pull out balsa wood sticks and things like this. Okay, so we're just gonna set this up here like that. Oh, wait, let's talk about specs for 2 seconds. Does it say specs?
There's a few.
New Predator 40 amp ESC, 2840. 3150 kV motor. Okay, so lightweight EPO, pre-installed. Okay, so everything should be good. All right, well, 11 blade fan. Okay, so we're gonna continue on. All right, so everything looks nice here. We have a folded manual. That's for the brushless speed controller. Okay, so that's gonna be, of course, for the ESC, the electronic speed controller. And we're just gonna pop this thing out as quick as we can here. Chopping the tape. If you're new to the channel here on Brian Phillips RC, what we do is we unbox these things, we build them, we set them up so you can take away some of the ambiguity of ordering online, especially airplanes like this, 1.75 wheels, very hard. Yeah, they're not soft at all. Large nose wheel. These are what we would consider to be fixed wheel bogies, spring steel, and then the nose gear is a smaller wheel. Can't quite make out the size here. But these are 1.75 inches. So this is probably, oh, I would say that's probably about an inch. And we got some antennas and, or excuse me, not antennas. These are just control rods and then some covers, okay? And some screws. Got the, these ones are horizontal stabilizers. Looks like we're gonna probably have to glue those on. Control horns, which are pre-installed, which is nice. Do work your surfaces. Okay, so do work your surfaces. And like I was saying, if you're new to the channel, what we do is we unbox, we build them, and then we do the radio setup, and that's gonna help teach you guys and guide you how to make the best decision for you. And we try not to do a lot of guesswork on what your exact goals are in a plane. We try to stay away from the fastest, cheapest, best analogies, plastic tip. We just try to share what our findings are. And of course, we share our opinions about our findings, but we're gonna help to differentiate between these opinions and of course, factual information. Okay, we got some, looks like a Sidewinder here. And there's quite a few of those actually. Looks like we've got 4 and they look to be all the same. Look like they're also glue attachment points. Those are gonna mount on missile rails. So we'll look at that here in a little bit. Sometimes you can pull these straight up, sometimes you have to cut both sides. These things are usually pretty well packed because we have so many planes and we've reviewed so many of them. I've gotten pretty used to opening these, but every once in a while you'll get one that has a part that doesn't like to pop out. So that's the other thing I want you to pay attention to as we do unboxings. If you're not sure why you're watching this, it's either because you're interested in the model or you're interested in seeing what we're gonna do with it, namely if we're gonna crash it. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but if you're here to watch a crash, you've come to the right place. We do a lot of it. but we also do successfully fly mini planes. All right, so here we go. We've got a wing, 9-gram digital servos. We'll show you the bottom here in just a second. Okay, big control surface. Looks like that one is also a pinch hinge. And it looks like we're in the outside hole, digital. And that is a separate connection point, so that's always nice. So you're gonna have no inboard flaps here, it looks like, which is a disappointing thing, but not something that can't be overcome because, as you know, inboard flaps tend to help make most of these airplanes fly pretty good, and they help you slow the plane down for approaches, especially if you're on a tight approach like what we run all the time. Okay, so we have the other wing here. Tape's popping on this one. It looks like some sort of a simulated inboard light. Okay, this is where our rocket pods, or whatever you want to call those, are going to go. There's also a drop tank in the center on this F-15, so that's pretty sweet. Ordnance is nice on this plane, but I do notice a lot of pitting on the foam. This type of things that we like to show off. Very light, but we don't do it to beat up the manufacturers as much as we are to share what's actually going on. And it looks like, actually, I take it back. These ones are where the missiles mount. Okay, so they're gonna go like that, and then these are mounted on either side. So it's kind of a unique configuration. You can see here drop tanks and missiles on the same apparatus on the F-15 here. Now, of course, this is a scale aircraft, so they're gonna try to make it look as scale as possible, which is really cool. And of course, there's always little tweaks to the length, width, and all that to keep the wing loading down, which means just make it lighter on its feet. Really pretty simple canopy and cockpit area. I can tolerate that. I would rather them keep it simple than do it wrong or do it crappy. Deep panel lines, and then of course this kind of nasty ridge here. But we have our servo cables pretty much all on the outside, kind of an ugly glue. Not real impressed with that because this should have gone to paint after the servos were in my opinion. That being said, if they come in after paint like this, they should have taped them with something that's gray. So a little bit disappointed by that. However, the body looks really nice. I love the way the canopy looks. We've got some tape to pull this magnetic attachment point. And as you can see, it comes up with a very small battery tray. So we're gonna be looking at probably 2200 4S is my guess for battery size. And let's just go ahead and pop the nose on real quick so you can get a profile. That is so pretty. And that subtle difference in gray just explains why you're never gonna find a perfect match if you go to the hobby store. But what some people have told me is they will take in a model just like this, or they'll take a wing like this, where you can take this in and see the difference, the subtle difference in colors. And you can go to your Home Depot or your Lowe's or your Menards if you're in our area, or Sherwin-Williams store, whatever store it is that does paint mixing for you, and you can get a mix that will be just right. Now, I have never actually done that myself, but I've heard it from a million different people. Carbon fiber spar for the wings. Obviously, that's gonna be for the main wing. Very thin in overall dimension, but thick sidewall. So it's actually pretty strong for a small rod. And then look right here, look what we have. We have a manual that is not folded. Good job, FMS. We hate folded manuals, so good job and thank you for that. We've always thought with a surface area this size, you should never have a folded manual because worst case scenario, it should be taped to the bottom. So, but they have managed to do that wrong many times, just like all the manufacturers. And so that's one of our gripes that we're trying to correct. Among other things, in the hobby, in the RC hobby, we of course bring our own personal concerns to the manufacturers and try to help get them addressed. Look like a beautiful vertical stabilizer, but then of course you can't see the details, so you have to rub those in if you really want to see it. And all I'm doing is I'll just lay it on the counter here and just kind of press and then take my fingernail and get that into the groove. And then over here a little bit sloppy because there's just no way for this to wrap and constitute that nice little bump in the way that this mold came out. A little bit of detail that's not great. But that being said, in terms of the size of the aircraft and the finish quality is always going to come into play largely around the cost component, okay? So if you want something that's going to be perfect, obviously you're going to have to spend more money and it's going to be closer to perfection. But as you go through the spectrum, finish levels, you're going to find that the more perfect they are, by far the more expensive they are. I do like the way that those go in. They're very simple. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take 2 seconds, clean up, and come right back for the build. All right, so we started charging some batteries. Let's take a look at this. We've got our plane stand out just in case we need it, but it's kind of a small plane, may not fit. And so we've got the smart chargers here. This is the S155. It's a single 55 watt charger, only goes up to 4S. This one's a dual, meaning 2 channels at 200 watts. It's called the S2200. Of course, you can see data for both. And then over here, we have the S1200. If you guys are seriously getting into flight and you're considering buying one, just buy this one. This is cheap though. If you're not sure, this one's a lot less money tied up, but you can still charge your individual lead like this. That's a Gen 2 charge, or Gen 2 battery, 2200, 30C in a 4S size. Now, nowhere in the manual does it say what size battery this plane takes, which is annoying, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna be a 4S. If it's a 4S, if the 4S burns it up, you'll know from my experience. Now, I do have 3S batteries charged in the same size, but I would be amazed if it'll fly on 3S, okay, because this is an EDF. Okay, so what we have to do now is we have to glue all this stuff together, and I just want to dry fit and make sure we know. Obviously, there's decals like this. You can go inside out, but that would be dumb. You want to make sure you get your main decals out, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay these sideways so I don't accidentally make a mistake. Now, there's 2 different types of glue that I would recommend for this. You can use CA if you want, but I would highly recommend using China glue. This is China glue from China. FMS China glue. They don't call it that, but we will link to this glue, okay? We always link to this glue. We have an accessories spot on our website, BrianPhillipsRC.com. If you follow the links in our video description below, you can buy the plane. We'll link to the receiver we pick, and we'll link to the transmitter as usual, as well as the battery. That's what we do for a plug and play. But there are alternatives to this. If you're wanting this, it's a little bit bigger tube, but also this is really cheap and it works very good. And the tube tends not to squeeze out when you open it. This one tends to squeeze out. It also skins a little bit premature at times and doesn't spread quite as good as the FMS China glue. That being said, when you're buying your receiver, you'll be buying it hopefully from our links, and you'll be at this site, or if you're buying the transmitter. That all being said, when you buy the airplane, you'll hopefully be buying it from this site, and you can go ahead and pick one of these up. I would highly recommend grab a couple no matter what you're buying, because they're cheap, and then the shipping will be, you know, covering that if you have any shipping necessary. So that's my 2 cents worth. This stuff is a little bit more expensive, but it does tend to last longer once opened. But this also lasts a good amount of time, but it's a smaller tube, so you just tend to run through it. Okay, all right. Getting back to the point, so we're gonna just open this up. I like to have my work ready to go because you get a little bit of squirting. And what we're gonna do is now we're gonna take and just lift up both of these control surfaces. Now remember, you don't wanna get glue all over it, you just wanna get glue where you want the glue, okay? So what I'm doing is I'm gluing every surface, just a little bit sticking out there. And we're just gonna put a little teeny bit in there. And you're like, geez, Brian, that's a lot of glue. Yeah, it kinda is, but at the same time, this China glue, you do need, it's a contact cement, so you do need a little bit. And what I'm doing is I'll put a little bit like that. And since it's just kind of coming out of the tube, I'm gonna go quick and just get it onto this too, okay? Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, you dry fit that, but you never check to see if you needed anything different for this, which goes on the bottom. And you're correct in that thinking. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put glue on that spot too. And same thing here. And you're like, geez, Brian, you're putting a lot of glue for a small work surface and you haven't got any of it spread out. That's true. Those are all good concerns. This stuff works almost identical to this, okay? Again, a little bit more expensive, a little larger package, cheaper, whatever you're doing. If you're buying a receiver from them, get some of this. If you're buying the plane from them, get some of this. We'll link to those. Okay, by the way, we get credit for the stuff you buy too. So that's the way this works. When we do these videos, we get small commissions from the manufacturers. We try not to talk you into one plane versus another, but we do want you to be aware of what's available. Okay, so spread that out. Make sure you get good contact area. Very simple stuff here. Spread it out. That bottom part is not going to be seen, I don't think. If it is, I apologize in advance. And if you ever do get a lot of this glue on a surface and you want to take it off, you can use Kicker. Kicker is for CA. It's a Kicker accelerant for the CA. Okay, now this stuff kind of got on the edge there. So I'm going to show you another trick to get that. I'm just getting this all spread. See where I got a little extra glue there? Right there. Nope, from there. See that glue? I'm just gonna roll this right up on. See, gone. Okay, pretty easy stuff. Now this will take off, this will take off a little bit of paint if you try to peel it off, so be careful. Don't get too excessive on the amount you want to take off of there, but you can see how it's painted on this surface. That's how you get a good clean surface. Now, a lot of guys are going to tell you to rough up this surface. I don't tell you to do that. You want to know why? Because I have never had a control surface break free because of that, with the exception of maybe one time in an accident. So the accident is really, and guys, see how sticky this is? Look what just happened. I threw it in my garbage. No, come around so they can see. See, it's stuck to the side. See, watch. Boop.
But you're gonna need that because you didn't put glue on the underside of the thingy for the thingies.
Oh, on this?
Yeah. Or are you gonna do that after you put the...
Yeah, I wanna get it
vertical.
setting up.
Okay.
So anyway, guys, getting back to my point that I was trying to make before the camera crew reminded me of this, you do have to glue both sides of the surface if you want the best bond, okay? Bond, James Bond. Yeah, see, it is gonna cover that. Okay, good. So it is gonna cover that spot.
Yep.
Okay, so you see what I'm doing, guys? I'm just gluing it. I'm just gluing it and gluing it like that. So you're thinking to yourself, Brian, that stuff is gonna be set totally by the time you work it. No, you actually usually have to wait to set this stuff together. Now, because there's so many of these pieces, I'm gonna literally have this like ready to rock and roll, and I'm gonna need to stick it together. So now I gotta flip this over. I am just gonna actually stick it on the garbage can. Now you won't believe me when I tell you this. You're gonna think I'm trying to sell you something, but I'm not. I'm just telling you the way it is because I've done it so many times. This stuff is so sticky. Watch this. I haven't done anything. Watch this. Okay. It's because it's so thick. But you see, it's already holding itself. Look at this. Not even stuck together. See those strings? That's what you want. See this, guys? Look, it's defying gravity. So as you can see, once it starts getting tacky like that, you do that 3 or 4 more times and you could stick that thing together and pretty much hold its own weight, okay? The whole plane, no joke. So I'm gonna put this here and I'm gonna slide this, now that I've tacked that up, this could probably use another minute or 2, but because I have to slide this into a cavity, you don't wanna wait too long. If you wait too long, put a little bit of fresh glue on there on the surface that you have to slide in, not the faces, but the slide in parts. Okay, now why do you do that? Because watch, as I slide this down and in, you see how hard it's pushing? You will have a heck of a time getting that in there. Yep, I just did that. Ew. See this? See this, guys? Watch. That is why I like China glue. It's huge. It just comes right off. Okay, if you remember having rubber cement as a kid, it's a lot like rubber cement. See this? Look, I got a little schmutz on the outside there. Just wipe it into the spot where you do want the schmutz, okay? There you go. So it's still on my fingers, so I'm just gonna lay this down because I don't wanna get that on my finish, because yes, you can let it dry and then you can try to peel it off dry, but you will take the finish off, almost certainly, okay? Ready? Going in, I'm going in. Going in hot, here it is. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, very good. Okay, so now that that's in there, I can say, okay, is that gonna hold the plane up? Not quite yet, but here in a couple of minutes. In fact, if you really wanna make it stick, you can pull that out and stick it back in, which sounds really awkward, but it's true. Okay, pushing down hard. Okay, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip the plane upside down and we're gonna go ahead and get these on there. Now there's obviously a right and wrong way. If you put it the wrong way, it won't go together, okay? So I'm just gonna do this like this. Okay, pretty simple stuff. Now, if I recall, the last time I built an F-15 with this same body, it was many moons ago and it was blue and white, and then I crashed it into a tree. And we coined the term the Eagle Killing Zone. So if you guys have been with us for a long time, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. The Eagle Killing Zone also just murdered another plane recently. So it became the Fox and Eagle Killing Zone. Now, I'm not trying to blame the Eagle Killing Zone. I'm just saying, oh, look at this, guys. Look, I needed glue all the way down the length of it. Did you see that? All the way down the length. Great. So I can actually glue that. I did not think I was going to get away with gluing that surface.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to...
Oh, that was...
Yeah, I know. It was thick. That was purposeful. A little squishy.
They're going to drip.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just going to do this here. See that? Okay, now that I've got that on there, I can take my drip stopper, that's patented, just kidding guys. And we're just gonna spread that out. And you're like, goodness gracious, you put a lot of glue on there. Well, I did put a lot of glue on here, and here's why. Because that spot is gonna be a pain otherwise, okay? And you can tell which side you need the glue. You know why? Because it's the side that's already got the glue as well, okay? So now I need to let that cook off for a minute. What do I mean by cook off? I mean chemically react with the ambient air. And yeah, if you want to take the paint off of the surface, you could, but honestly, it's a waste of your time. If you decide you want to do it for posterity reasons, go for it, guys. And then I'm just gonna take, since I gotta wait for it, I'm gonna just slather a little bit up on the side there. Okay, now we're gonna let that set for just a second. Also, just to keep in mind, with this aluminized tube, when you squeeze, sometimes it will keep squeezing, so be careful what you lay it on top of. Because it might squeeze a little more than you think, okay? So now that that's set for a second or two, we're gonna have to do the ordnance. So why don't we do that real quick while we wait for this to get set up. Now you can build these on the wings if you want. The other thing you can do is if you're not into the ordnance, you can actually leave this stuff off, or if you wanna just do drop tanks, that's fine. But I like the look of the missile rails on the F-15. So I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna build these up with the understanding that it's gonna be a permanent fixture. Now, the only thing I'm trying to figure out is, can I lay that down? It looks like it's gonna touch or really close to touching. Nah, because I need your hands free for focus. Okay, so I'm just gonna set it up like that. You see, all I'm doing is just going along this little lip and then going along this little lip. It's simple stuff. And yeah, I did not take the paint off. That is not necessary. I mean, you can do it if you want to, but it's kind of overkill is what it is. And then it looks like what I'm gonna do is just go kind of heavier on this side. And what's gonna happen is then I can transfer a little bit of this goop onto the other side. Now I'm not gonna leave them like this. I'm just gonna stick it on there so it can transfer some. Then I'm gonna pull it right away, okay? See all the strings? Strings attached for sure, guys. Okay, now I'm gonna pull this away and I'm gonna set this so it can start to set up. Okay, it's a little bit messy. I'm gonna set it back down. Remember, if you get it on your fingertips, get it off of your fingertips or you will regret it because you'll get it on the surface of your finish. Now, as soon as I'm done with this missile, I'm probably gonna go ahead and get those horizontal stabilizers. No, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna go ahead and resist the temptation to do that. I'm gonna stick this one down. See, all I'm doing, guys, that's gonna mark the spot and it's gonna put some stickum down, okay? This stuff is clear too, so it's not gonna be visible. You won't see it, and look at how nasty that stuff is. It is so sticky, which is what you want.
I have a question on those.
Yeah.
There's obviously a right way and a wrong way on...
No, they're all the same shape. On these, they're all the same.
No, but like which way they're pointing out? Like which way is the front?
Well, look at the plane. The pointy, the sharper point goes forward.
Yep.
You're saying like back front.
That, yeah.
The back is that side. You can tell because of the angle of, you can tell because of the angle of that. That's forward.
Okay.
That's the front side.
Gotcha.
Okay, so I'm just laying this down and all you have to do is replicate that 4 times. It's not a hard thing, but truthfully people will think, hey, I gotta glue this thing together. I don't wanna get that plane. No, that's dumb, guys. It's so easy. And by the way, I'm doing it sloppy because we're trying to hurry and get this done because I would like to try to fly this for sunset. And the sun is, it's up there. It's kind of like blinding right now. So we can't fly right this second anyway. But what we're doing is we're trying to get this done to show you just how reasonably easy it is to build and also show you how nice the finished product can be and how quick you can go from 0 to hero, which is cool. So we're gonna set this down. There is a lot of gluing on this, admittedly. That's a lot of different steps to glue. And by the way, if you don't get glue with the model, so you need to provide your own glue, and I'm not a big fan of that. That was one of the only good things about Dynams, is that they included glue. So, all right, here we go. So now we're gonna stick this down, get that right on top of that surface, and yes, it is a sticky, icky, okay? Now it's stuck together, and I mean, it's stuck together like hard now. Okay, so be careful when you stick this down. It's not gonna wanna slip. You see how sticky this is? Watch this. Look, this is barely touching my finger on it. And it just doesn't wanna let go, okay? See this, guys? It's just like so dang sticky. Imagine licking, you know, like when you get one of those big manila envelopes, so you got like, you know, legal documents in, and you've got that stupid little like foldy brass thing on there, and you're like, who needs that? This thing is so sticky, right? Well, that's the way it is, and it's dry stickum, and then you put it together, and boy, you just about have to rip the envelope and have to open it, right? This is what you're making, okay? All right, so here we go. So I'm gonna hold inside of the tubes, and that'll give me something to press against because I don't want to press on the glue, okay? And then you see this alignment issue? Now I can hold that and then just stick it, boom. See, and then it just kind of stays there, okay? If you did your work right, it'll stay there. Now, all I have to do is wait a few minutes and I can come back through and I can kind of twist this to take off any excess if there is, and it'll come right off of there. You see that? And then it just kind of gets this tight weave, almost looks like a spider web or something. But you see that? Pulls right off of there. Did you see what just happened, guys? That's awesome. So it'll make your finished product really nice, and it's super easy. Now, we just, oh no, I got my stickum on the side of there. So I'm gonna lay this down and we'll come right, actually, here, hold this. So now all I need to do is just put these, I'm gonna try to do them in order so that we have the right amount of cooking time on each of these, okay? And then paying special attention to clean my fingertips between steps. It's important, you want a clean tip when you stick it in, right? Okay, good. All right, so we've got those held together, all right? Now we've got the strings kind of going all over the place, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just, see this little bit here? Watch this, boom. Now, first of all, I'm just gonna warn you, if you get too aggressive with this, you can take paint off even at this stage, but you probably won't on this model, okay? See how nice that is? See the string that's stuck to me? Pull that off of there. See those little over spills? All you're doing is you just spin it and it just pulls right off of there like a spider web, guys. And if you get to where it's full, go to a clean spot. Work it, spin it, spin it, spin it, spin it, spin it, and it'll mat down that cotton. You can tell it's working then. And by the way, you'll never, ever, 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 ever see that drip, but I'm gonna go ahead and take it off of there anyway, just for posterity reasons, okay? And you're probably thinking, geez, Brian, you're being sloppy with that. No, because look, the sloppiness is how you get enough glue on. Then you just come back and you just hit it a little bit and you're done, okay? See how nice that looks? It's pretty much perfect now, okay? So we can set that aside. Now, if you'll show me this, see this? Watch. Spin it, spin it, spin it, spin it. Look at that, guys. Look at that, look at that. Coming right off of there. You'll never know it happened because it's gone. And that's little strings there. We'll just grab those couple of little strings. That's why I don't take paint off, because you know, you just end up pissing away a lot of extra time is what happens. And then you end up with this similar result anyway. Now this is gonna be hard to even slide on here, I bet. See, it's starting to really set up. But I mean, there are people that will let this dry even more, but you have to have only a flat surface to a flat surface. Then you can let it practically dry totally. But you see this, guys? That little bit of goop down there? Boom. And don't worry if it poops out, that's fine. It's all part of the show. Just get good alignment. And then look at this, guys. Just, I mean, it's like, it's there. It's not coming off, okay? If you decide to tempt fate, you know, I usually like to show that a couple of times because people never believe me. If you're new to the hobby and you're here on Brian Phillips RC, you're gonna think, hey, this guy is full of crap. You know, he tried to glue stuff together and then he showed me holding it up and it's like, it was some, you know, movie magic. Nope, no movie magic here. We just show it the way it is. We have no reason to mislead you guys. We want you to know the full truth and nothing but the truth. Like I just threw that and it didn't go into the garbage can because there was a string attached to it. All right, so look at this, guys. I want to show you another thing. See this? I got all that extra goop there, right? So what am I gonna do? The same exact thing I did. I'm gonna walk it around the cotton and then you can let that set up a little bit. See, I went backwards. See how that doesn't work? You gotta go the same direction every time. See that? Look, I got my first paint. See, I lost my first paint there. That's why you gotta be careful. But look at this, see? Just going perfect. A little bit of schmutz here. Again, this is clear. It's not gonna be very easy to see. I mean, you may see it. Like if you're, you know, doing your final walk around as a pilot and you're like 1.5 inches tall and
right.
you're the, yeah. You're not gonna, you're never gonna see it.
I think you'll be all right.
You're never gonna see it. All right, guys, let's look at how beautiful this is. Oh, yes. Oh, that's so good. Okay, first things first, wiping the counter with my hands, sliding it down on the ground. Here we go. Let's look at this. We got some goopage here. I gotta grab a new, clean Q-tip. All right, clean Q-tip for here. That goopage is unacceptable to me. Oh, that is so sticky. I don't think I'm gonna be getting that off of there. See? Even that came off. Nice. Okay, same thing here. Got some goopage. See what I'm doing, guys? All it takes is a little effort. Now I'm gonna take and squish this top to bottom, and then I'm gonna take and press this down so I can press down on the aircraft, okay? So I'm pressing pretty hard, guys, okay? Pressed hard. Now, this here, I can see there's a spot that needs clamped by my fingers, okay? And if you're in any doubt, you can pin this with a skewer of some sort, okay? See this gap here? That gap doesn't bother me as long as it's not like excessively huge, okay? But what I would like to do is I wish there was some way to pin all this together, and I think we might have done that on previous build. See that movement? I'm not a huge fan of that, but it does feel, it feels mostly solid here, but there's just that gap right in here. I wish I would have gotten a little bit more excessive on the glue. But that's okay, guys. If you're still concerned and you've already got it glued there and you're like, I don't feel comfortable, take yourself a bottle of medium CA, goop that, hit it with kicker, and you're done. You'll never know any better, and it'll fill the gap because that medium stuff will fill the gaps. But this is not gonna be a big problem. It just looks kind of ugly. Now, bear in mind, after a few hours, you'll be able to go at it like this and just pull that out. If it poops out, you can take it off later too. And sometimes I'll come back and there'll be like a big ball in one spot. Make sure your surfaces are clear though. You do not want to have it bind. That's all I'm concerned about here. Okay, so there you go, guys. That's not coming off. And I'm not sure if I want to throw caution to the wind just quite yet, but there you go. There you go. Show the people the gap right here. There you go, guys. See that? You're never gonna load this plane like that. There is never a time where you're gonna have load holding this unless you're in a tree, and then you might.
Then it doesn't matter.
But then it's like too late because the tree's probably gonna knock those surfaces off anyway. So anyway, the reason we show you that stuff, guys, is to give you a certain level of confidence in the ability to glue it with that material. Now, these ones, when they're dry, they're real easy to set on the plane and take off, and I'll show you while they're off the wing. Okay, so this goes in here and then slides back. So there you go. Now it's on. Okay, and they're ambidextrous, left and right are the same. Very good. So we are going to leave those off so we can get to the wires. All right, so the next step, of course, is we got to get the wing on. Okay, so we're just going to slide this thing in here. All right. Okay, so that goes in, approximately half. And then you got two wings. You got one left and one right. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, is that correct?
Yes.
How'd you tell?
I've done this like 300 times.
No, the servo's down.
Servo's down.
Okay, so we'll slide that in, and then there's two screws that go in. But for now, we're just gonna go ahead and slide both sides on. And I'm not sure if we'll be able to plug these in. There's just a little bit of a relief here, which is nice. Oh, and then there is a carbon fiber support, but the support only goes, it may not be carbon, it may actually be just fiberglass. It only goes about that far out. These things feel stout. I don't think there's gonna be an issue there with the dynamic loading on those wings. Okay, looks really nice. Beautiful plane.
Yeah, I like it.
Now this can be hand launched or it can be wheels up, wheels down ops, depending on what your flavor is, but I'm gonna warn you, one thing about these things are weak. Okay, if they're anything like my previous experience, they also tend to have wheels back a little bit farther. So when you go to roll, the CG is so far in front of your mains, you have to get up to such a high speed and then it janks into the air. So we came up with some solutions for that previously, and we'll see if we can apply them to this plane as well. All right, so we're gonna flip this over. But I'm gonna say, if you hand launch this plane, it is absolutely gorgeous. All right, so here we go. We've got a brown and we've got a brown. Line the browns up or line the yellows up. And if yours comes with a red, white, and black, then you'll want to line up make sure it's fully purchased into the hole. See that? Not all the way yet. There it goes. See how it's in now? All right, there we go, folks. So now I'm just going to stick this down. And you're probably thinking to yourself, why are the wires separated? Yeah, I kind of agree myself. Okay. That's a nice little holder. I like that. Okay, now over here, we've got yellow or orange and orange. All right, so we're just going to slide this in. And you're like, why are you plugging those in first, Brian? Well, the reason we plug them in first is because it's easier to do that when you've got a little bit of play on the wing, because if you can't quite make the angle, you can slide the wing in and out a little bit. Again, but to all their own, it's not like that's going to make that big of a difference on the build. But you see, now we can slide these in and we can start accomplishing our 2 screw holes. Now also, you can add an inboard flap if you decide to do that. You would have to, of course, carve and put in your own servos. I would suggest getting it closer to the CG point, which would be about here, and then doing a longer linkage. Plus that gets you away from this hole. And then I would cut this, you know, like at a steep angle, and then let that hinge with like a tape hinge. Look nice. You wouldn't even know it was there. You can also set up flap-arounds, but I'm not sure we're gonna do that on an outboard flap-around. I don't think they work very good. So not sure if we're gonna do that yet. Kind of depends. So, screws. Let's talk about screws for a minute. The hardware that comes with this is pretty much right here. And what we've got is these things are fuel tube. They're gonna be used for the clevises. And then we've got some small screws and some bigger screws, okay? The bigger machine bolts come with 1 spare. That's normal, customary practice from FMS. So we have 4 screws, 2 of which on each wing. And then what are these 5 small screws for?
The landing here said screw in assembly, so
yes,
I guess.
That's right. That's what they're for. Okay, so 1.5 millimeters, that's 2.5. 1.5 millimeters, 2 millimeters. Okay, so it's a 2 millimeter drive. So if you don't have a drive set like this, they do come in real handy for this. Okay, so we'll just get one of them started at the front, and then we'll use that as a lever point. Use that as a lever point to push it in. Okay, and I have to, sometimes you have to really fight these, but that went in really smooth. And remember, this is simple stuff. Once you have built 2 or 3 of these airplanes, most of them come together in a real similar fashion. Here it goes. And I don't suggest using a drill, because if you use a drill, it's very easy to over tighten these things and break stuff. Remember, you're screwing 2 pieces of plastic together with nut zerts that are larger than the screw, and then they're glued to the foam. Okay, so they become one with the foam, and then of course they dissipate the load. So you can see what I'm talking about. This is all plastic going into a plastic receiver, and that's got some large bite points that go into the frame to provide some structural integrity. And they've just really worked this out on most of these models anymore, come together so nicely. This is very ugly though. I don't know what the heck that happened there. Look at that, that's super ugly. But that's just a big piece of plastic that covers the ESCs. I'd really like to see that cleaner. Now, if you were concerned about this, and I would be, if I wasn't in a hurry, I'd get some glue out and I would put some glue in there and just tack that down.
Oh gosh, sorry, make me nervous.
I would just tack that down, okay? So where's the other screw? Here it is. All right. So we'll just go ahead and get this one started. See, I'm pulling it in even by the screw and it just went fine. But you see what I'm talking about? These 2 colors, I don't like that you can see those. They should have provided a decal for coverage there. That would have been definitely a good call, and it wouldn't have cost a lot, even if they gave us a decal that we could apply at our convenience. But that being said, if you're gonna do flap-arounds, you're probably gonna have to split this Y cable. It's almost certainly a Y cable. I'd be really happy if it's not a Y cable. Let's take a look real quick. So grab the tape, pull up, canopy comes off. We got the wires all go up to the nose here, okay? Then we have this, which is our XT60, okay? So the XT60, of course, is how we plug in our battery. So if you're using a battery equipped with an XT60, you'll be fine, but you can also put an IC3 into an XT60, which is what we are going to be using. Now, of course, they're not technically compatible, but they do fit together and they work just fine. okay?
Do you want me to file that for you?
Yeah, please file that warning away in our
There we
safety
go.
filing cabinet. Now, looking up in here to answer my questions go like this. Did I have, in fact, ailerons separatable? Thrust reverse? This might have thrust reverse. If it does, then I will want to play with it. Okay, this is the ailerons. And yes, the ailerons are going to a Y cable here, okay? So the ailerons are right here, and that is a Y cable. So what does that tell us? That means that if you can access the Y cable plug, then you can cut one set and re-terminate a connector on the other set, okay? So this would be a short order right there. I mean, that'd be tough to do because it's so close to the end. So there's two ways to accomplish this if you want to do flap-ons. First of all, you have to separate the channels for the wings. If you do separate the channels, then you can make the ailerons act as ailerons and flaps, also known as flaperons or spoilerons, or both, depending on how you set up your flap mode, okay? I don't think we're going to set up flaperons on this plane just because they didn't separate that wire, because I want to show it as is, because some people are going to want to see it as is. Now, the cool thing about flaperons is it still operates the same way, and since this is a plug-and fly, and it doesn't have a reflex, we don't have to worry about dealing with that. We can just go straight into our receiver. Gosh, you know, the way the clouds hit, I don't think we're going to get this thing flown tonight because the sunset was early.
It was.
When you have clouds that sit like this, like a shelf, it looks like a mountain. And when the sun sets, it goes behind the clouds, and then you get that early sunset. That's exactly what's happened tonight, which is a big bummer. But if we can get thrust reverse, we'll show you how to do that too. So maybe it's okay. Maybe we will set up flaperons. I'm not sure. But you do have a rudder, so you have a steerable nose wheel. But you're looking and you're thinking to yourself, but there isn't a rudder, Brian. What are you talking about? Correct. There is no air rudder. However, on this plane, and what we've done in the past, is we have taken the nose gear, and I like wheels up, wheels down ops, okay? And I will take and install that, whichever direction we end up ultimately installing it, and then I'll build a clear piece of plastic that looks like a flag, and then that gives you a rudder. Not that you need the rudder, but you're gonna want it. You're gonna want it if you're wanting the best ops in the air, okay? Now, the other thing too is because you have a steerable nose gear, you still have the same amount of channels needed, okay? So here's a pro tip, okay? If you want to save a channel, you can do throttle, rudder, no, throttle, aileron, and elevator, okay? That's it. And then you're like, wait, well, why would you can't get a 3-channel receiver. Well, I don't know that you can, but you can then do rudder on a Y cable with your ailerons. And what happens is your steerable nose gear is actuated by your ailerons. So then you mix in your rudder to actuate the ailerons and vice versa. So you have 100% one-to-one mix on aileron to rudder. No, I'm sorry, you do that backward. And what that does is it allows you to ground handle the plane without giving up a channel. Now, the other thing that happens with that is you get a coordinated turn because, believe it or not, there is still a bit of control surface that comes from the nose wheel. So you get a coordinated turn out of it too, which is kind of cool. Now, if you're just hand launching, of course, you're going to lose that capability, but you still probably want to hook up the channel, I would assume, if you're like a normal person, okay? So we'll kind of go over the concept, but not necessarily do all that stuff in this build. I'm not sure what we're going to end up doing. But I just wanted to double check on that. There is definitely access to where the Y cable terminates here, okay? So I'm actually going to pull this back. You're going to have to get the receiver up there, which means you'll have to have something to lengthen that connection too. But I'm just thinking, how the heck are you going to get in there and actually do a splice? Because the crimper that crimps the ends on these things has got a big head on it. It's like that big, and then the handle comes out like that. And it's got a big movement to it. So I'm kind of thinking to myself, the other thing you could do is you could solder on an extension. So you could cut the 3 wires and you could just take another extension and you could solder them, and then you could slide the heat shrink down so you could keep it cool, slide it down, heat it with a lighter. that you hold up in the center like this. Put like something metal on either side to keep the heat from melting your foam, and you can do that. But I'm just like not sure I care that much about the flaperons, because I just don't like the way the flaperons work on these planes.
Yeah, because you usually say if they're outboard.
If they're outboard, they're less effective.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I'd like to see this thing fly with flaps, but it's probably not going to need either of them because it's just such a light plane. But if we can get thrust reverse, I feel like we can accomplish the goals we want.
Right.
So maybe rather than doing flaperons, we'll see if the thrust reverse works. Okay, so our next move is probably going to be radio setup, but we do actually have to do one amazing step, super complicated step here, and that is going to be, we are going to do shelf liner. And if you guys don't know what shelf liner is a trick that we didn't come up with on our own. We came up with it by suggestion from many other people, and it was probably somewhere along the lines of I also did it at one point. But so many people have suggested it that I kind of feel, like it's kind of hard to explain that we were doing that also on our own years ago. We just kind of got back to it. I hate Velcro on my batteries. So what do? We take off this piece, then we use some shelf liner. Beautiful sunset, by the way. It's just too high. Dang. Okay. So you take that, you take some scissors, which we have out already. You lay your shelf liner down, you take and pull this tape off. And this is just normally what you would do is you would apply this straight to your battery, and that's all hunky-dory, but what happens to your battery? Then you cover up the label, you don't know what milliamp hour you've got, you don't know how many cells it is, you can tell from the balance lead. But when it's a Gen 2 battery, if it's a smart battery from Spectrum, you won't be able to tell unless you just know, or you count the cells, or you cover up the warning label versus covering up the normal marking label. So this one here is done. So we'll talk about this as an example. Okay, so we got these when we did our F-14, and they're in pretty good shape. They're relatively new, 30 C packs. They didn't tell us what C rating we need on this plane either. Okay, I did apply a very small piece of Velcro because in that plane you really needed it. But on this one, what's gonna happen is now I've got this big anti-slip pad that's gonna be in here, and that's gonna be all we have. Because guess what? There is no strap inside of here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is there?
There's no strap.
To be?
None. But watch this. You're going to have a pressure fit too by the time you stick that in there. See? Right?
Yeah.
That's very interesting choice. FMS. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide this in. And we're going to drop it down. Okay, so now I just want to stop for a second as I'm sliding my Velcro back in. Part of what we do on Brian Phillips RC is we show you guys what you're going to get. It's not really meant to be an indictment on any particular manufacturer, but in this case, FMS has chosen not to have a strap in here, okay? Now, normal circumstances would say that, your battery is more or less trapped, right? This is a bank and yank plane. It's going to have limited flight envelope characteristics. You're not going to be doing like lots of crazy negative G maneuvers under normal circumstances. I mean, granted, this is like a fighter jet. But you see how this is going to fit in there? See that? Like, you don't have anywhere to go with the battery, okay? Holy crap, that goes way back. Awesome.
That's good.
So you can put a long battery in there, and also you can do a tall battery. So that's kind of cool, because if you can get it in there, if it fits, it ships, right? But the thing is, if it gets any longer than that, you're going to have a real heck of a time getting that in and out, because you have to make it over this bulkhead here. Now, that bulkhead could be trimmed, admittedly. But if you wanted to put a huge battery in there, you could put a huge battery in there. So we'll see how the CG works out. I guess my point in saying is, sometimes we say things that are opinion-based, and sometimes we say things that are obvious and everybody knows in the room, including the manufacturer, okay? In this case, I would say it was a little bit strange to me that there wasn't some sort of retention. However, in seeing how far that goes back, I guess that kind of makes sense, but I still would have liked to see some retention. Now, I'm going to slide that battery in there just for, practice. And then also, there is a trick of the day that you can do if you have some spare foam. Now, spare foam, of course, is not like it grows on trees, but a lot of times you'll find it in trees, okay? So we got some spare foam here. This is a trick of the day that you can copy from me any day you want. Look, now I've got retention, okay? Now, I'm not saying that that battery couldn't get flung out, but should we test our glue again, even with the battery? Okay, again, that thing is never gonna have loading on just the horizontal stabilizer. I'm not trying to break it. I'm showing you that that glue is set up subject to the anti-gravity machine that I just did. You see the battery? It's not moving, okay? I don't wanna damage things with those leads, so I don't wanna do that too aggressively. But as you can see, nothing's moving.
Yeah.
So if you take out this block, then what happens is it is allowed to lose the friction component of that, but you still have the side component. Now, what happens to batteries when you drive them hard, camera crew?
They puff.
They can puff. And so you just need to keep that in mind. Generally, they puff this way. The way I've got it laid in there, they would tend to puff this way, not this way, okay? They puff based on the way that the cells are stacked. So if you look at the cells, this is the flat, so that's the face. And the face, and you can see how they're kind of sandwiched, those little marks there. That's just from rub marks. So 1, 2, 3, 4 cells. When they puff, they're gonna tend to puff out like that, okay? So if you put your battery in and you put it vertical in this case, there's nothing retaining it, okay? So if you do that, it's also allowed to puff and then eventually contact the sides. So I would suggest whichever direction makes better sense for your application. I want the smooth side down so I don't use this Velcro. It's just gonna undermine my shelf liner. And then wherever that ends up, that's gonna be in there. And then you can use something like this. Boom. And then that'll help with retention. All right, so super simple solutions. That's why you come to Brian Phillips RC. That's why we have such short videos. They're always super simple. Just kidding, guys. All right, so we got these ordnance packs. We'll just kind of lay those off to the side. And looks like the glue is mostly coming up. I do have a little bit of mist there. See that? Mm-hmm. I missed some of that. It'll probably still come off. In fact, I'm gonna take this, see if I can grab it. See, I'm gonna just try to walk that off. So you can go both ways once it's really dried like that. See that, guys? And just, you can come way out here and then get a little fresh part. See, nothing happens if you use fresh, but then if you use that spot that you started earlier, it pulls it right off. See? See what I'm talking about? It makes it just perfect. Pretty cool, huh? Easy solutions. We try to bring easy solutions. Sometimes the solutions aren't as easy as we want. Okay, and then back here while I'm grabbing the glue, I'm just gonna grab a little teeny bit there. I'm gonna grab a little teeny bit there, and I'm gonna grab that little ball I was talking about earlier. Okay, just grab that little ball, and grab that little ball, grab that little bit there. See that little ball? Just gonna grab that little ball, okay? Oops. And if you ever get a little bit on there, you can, sometimes you gotta manually reposition it on the head of your Q-tip. See? See? There it is. Looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. Oh, and then over here, so you got just a little bit extra schmutz coming out there. So we're just gonna kinda twist that. Oh, buddy. See, that's where I knew I was getting too lucky. Now,
Yep.
Let's talk about that. If you do have that happen, then we'll come right back to the build, obviously. You can grab yourself a marker, and I'm just looking what I got for markers, and I'm thinking, you know what? I don't really have a good marker that's gonna match that color because it is, after all, what color is it? Gray. Okay, so I found that one thing that works really nice is just an everyday pencil, and I'm just gonna mark a bunch and just make sure I get a good clean tip. Okay, now I'm gonna take the flat. I'm gonna see if this gets dark enough to satisfy my desire to blend. Okay, you guys see what's happening? It's not dark enough, but it's close, okay? So now if you can't get that to blend, you can use a marker, which of course would be the easy way to do it. But as you can see, every time I rough this up, I get like a fresh lease on life. And then I can bring more of that to the point where it just sort of blends in, almost, but not quite. I mean, it looks a heck of a lot better than it did.
Yeah.
In terms of white contrast color. I would suggest you don't stab the tail of your plane though, like I did twice. Okay, you see? Now it's mostly covered up and you probably won't notice that except that I just filmed it and put it on the World Wide Web for the world to see.
You can't tell from back here.
Yep. Now, if you took a black marker and you did the same thing, you would get that bluish black color from a Sharpie and it would not look as good. Okay, it would look like black. okay?
Yeah.
So like I said, pretty easy fix. It's not gonna be perfect, but it'll do the job. All right, now let's talk about receivers and stuff. Now, I don't know if we're gonna glue anything. I kind of doubt we're gonna glue anything more, so we can probably put that up. We do need to get into radio setup at some point here, and you'll notice that we haven't put the linkages on. That was intentional, and we haven't put the landing gear on. That's mostly just because I don't want all this crap hanging out, okay? But I tend to have a hard time breaking halfway through a radio setup, so I am gonna flip this over. I'm gonna go ahead and set it up like we're gonna do wheels up, wheels down. We don't have to do that, but we probably will, okay? Now the instructions are gonna tell you to go like this, right? Or do they?
I don't know. We didn't get that far.
Let's look. Because I'm gonna show the people both options.
Both options. Okay.
Okay, see them? They're going forward. So you may be inclined to put them this way, right? That's wrong. They go this way. So they go forward, which means that that gets closer to the CG, but you're gonna find out, even with them that direction, they're a long ways away from where the CG is, which is like right here, okay? So that makes a difference. Now I also wanna talk about these clips. There's an absent, there's a void, and then there's a tab. The tab goes back. Why does the tab go back? Because that's the way it fits. That's gonna catch this little lip. There's a lip right there. And then this is gonna right in the middle. Okay, so it's a very simple, basic construction, but this is the first thing that's gonna break on your plane, 100% guaranteed. In fact, I'll be surprised if they make it through our maidens without breaking. Okay, that means I did a good job flying, if that's true. Now, that's not to say that, you know, like the landing gear are gonna come out and you're never gonna fly the plane again. It's just more a matter of this little plastic piece tends to be kind of a weak spot in my experience. Okay, see how there's 2 screw holes? It does look nice, and it's a relatively easy thing to do, but I gotta say, it's not my favorite type of attachment style for landing gear, because I prefer landing gear that are easily removable without tools, okay? This obviously requires just a Phillips screwdriver. This one here is one of the many Chinese wonders of the world where they have, instead of labeling them with Phillips sizes like everybody else, they did millimeters, because Phillips is obviously not an imperial measurement. It's definitely Chinese.
It hasn't been around for like thousands of years.
Well, I don't know about thousands,
Hundreds.
but yeah, I'm actually not sure. It could have been thousands. I don't think it's thousands though. The Industrial Revolution.
I think they just
When
do
did the
whatever they
Industrial
want.
Revolution happen? It would not have been thousands.
No,
No, it's hundreds of years.
hundreds.
I mean, maybe like a lot of hundreds, but I don't know how many.
Not even
It
a
would
lot
have been
of
in
hundreds.
the United States, I thought.
Yeah.
But either way, you guys get my point. It's hilarious. The Chinese love to do
Yes.
funny things. They play funny tricks like this.
They should have just written it all in
China,
vowels.
listen, the Americans made it. Don't be put millimeters on my tools anymore. See, 3 millimeters? No, get that out of here. That's Phillips number 1.
And I don't even understand, like, what part of it is 3 millimeters?
I don't know. The shaft.
Oh.
See, there it is. Now it's in. Okay, so you guys see what I'm talking about? So it just sort of holds it in that pocket, but not very well. So what's the first thing that's gonna happen when you splay this? It's gonna break those 2, boop,
Yep.
done. Okay, so in that regard, you know, they look nice for being fixed gear, I gotta admit. Usually fixed gear are super fugly, which means friendly ugly. For those of you who have their ears damaged by that commentary. Okay, so I'm gonna go to 1 millimeter. I think this is 1 millimeter, it might be 1.5. Nope, 1, sweet. Okay, so now I'm gonna just drop this in. You see how there's a flat surface. It's a machined flat here. Okay, and then that's gonna go in and it's gonna get purchased on there. And you see how it's not wanting to go until it did. And now that it's going, see how it's not straight? That's what we want. And you're like, but Brian, you want that straight. No, you want it to be in the correct position to your servo. And I gotta say, I mean, for being fixed gear, they don't look that bad. I mean, I was like really nervous about that because I am kind of a gear nut. I love the way they look and I love retracts better, but if I'm gonna have decent looking fixed gear, I'll probably keep them. See, that looks all right. Here's the thing. When you see a jet go by and you got landing gear down, you're like, who did that? Who is that guy? I want to talk to him. So we'll see how things go. But let's look at the retract. Excuse me, not the retract, but the servo. You see this? Remember I was just talking about not being straight? Look at this. There's a reason it's not straight. It's because it's not straight. Now that's sort of straight, and yet we probably still have a deviation in our center line, okay? So if that's centered, then we're gonna have to wake up the servo, unscrew this screw, and then reposition it on the spline. Of course, there's a spline on the output shaft, so there's vertical lines, and then that holds the output, the control arm in a certain position. It can be here, or it can be here, or it can be here, or it can be here, and we'll just adjust it accordingly so that we get the most central location. But then again, since you're only sharing one control axis, you don't have to so much worry about trim on the rudders because you're only dealing with the steerable nose gear. All right, so one thing too, I just noticed a big ball of sticky stuff.
Trying to take off more paint.
Watch this, right here. Boom. There it goes. Oh yeah, got it that time. Okay. And no, camera crew, I'm not trying to take off more paint.
Tempting fate.
Whatever, it's worth it. It's worth it. That one's a little bit safer bet than the one that I lost paint on. Okay, so now we're truly at the step where we have to make a decision on a receiver, okay? So now, historically, FMS planes have been coming with what's called the Reflex V2, and that is something that is a recent flight stabilizer that was incorporated into all these model airplanes, and it's been reasonably good. It's maybe not quite as amazing as AS3X and SAFE, and so when I see the Reflex V2, I think, okay, economical choice that's gonna give you a very good stabilizer, but maybe not quite as amazing as you could get. So I'm gonna slide these fuel tubes onto here as we're kind of in between steps, see? Fuel tube, just run it down so that it's over the flat, okay? And so when I see one without the Reflex, then I think, oh, okay, cool. So I can put SAFE and AS3X in here. But that comes at a cost. And so we bring that to your attention because for most of you, when you buy a plane that's not especially expensive like this, you're thinking to yourself, well, I mean, I don't want to break the bank because, you know, after all, it's not a very expensive plane. I don't want to have to spend a lot of coin on this thing, okay? That's a fair argument. By the way, I'm just getting a bag that has some different attachment choices here. There's a little bit of Velcro in there. Attachment choices, hon. And then I have another bag that has like double-sided tape because we're gonna have to mount a stabilized receiver, and a stabilized receiver is spatially aware. So you can use Velcro in there if you think you're gonna try to share receivers, which I would highly not recommend because you're just gonna end up calling out the wrong model and you're gonna have an accident and it's gonna be a big disaster, and then you're gonna be like, Brian, why did you tell me to do that? I'll say, I specifically told you not to. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna look through our box of goodies and we'll come right back. All right, so we have the NX10 and we're gonna use the Air 630. Why the 630? Well, the 630 is like $5 cheaper than the 631, and it does not have an external antenna. It has an integral antenna that's down here, and it's built into the circuit board. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, yeah, but that's a jet and it's fast and blah, 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 and all this. Don't worry, it's supposed to have the same range or better than the ones with the external antennas. I do not buy that, but for what it's worth, there's not much room in here either. And I like this because it has end pins.
Yeah.
So we can slide it up into here, yeah. And that's where it's gonna live.
Yeah.
And guess what? And you're like, but Brian, that's not on the center of gravity. You know what? These stabilizers are more sophisticated than they were when they first came out. So you don't have to have them right on the center of gravity, although they do tend to perform slightly better, I think. Okay? You can have a worse configured, you can have a lesser correctly set up, yes, a lesser correctly set up stabilized receiver or flight controller if you are on the center of gravity, in my expectation. Okay?
Okay.
So here we go. So you can see it's very light, very simple. There are 7 sets of plugs. There's a button a push button, momentary push button, and it is the Spectrum logo, as you can see here. All right. Then there's also a bind plug, and it says S plus minus, and it's painted on the silk screen. Do they have a great shot of that? So that's going to tell you what direction to plug your wires in within the order of the plugs here. So you've got the bind program SRXL2. Yeah, SRXL2, which of course would go to a serial satellite receiver. And in this case, in the SRXL2 setup, not DSMX or DSMX2. That's SRXL2. Sorry, having trouble saying that. I always have trouble saying that. What that means is that there is a 3 and a 4 wire configuration. You need the 4 wire configuration, even though, interestingly enough, you will go out to the connector and it will have 3 pins on it. So anyway, the difference between an SRXL2 and SRXL is binding procedure predominantly, and then the variety of other factors. There's more technology crammed into the new ones, but the binding procedure is a whole procedure. It's not just a simple short, signal to ground. That doesn't do it. You have to actually give a pulse for a certain number of milliseconds at the beginning of the process, which you can do with this. Now, the other thing you can do is you can bind your transmitter to your receiver, and then you can use whatever you have and bind it separately using another transmitter. If you get one of these, you can use that to bind. But on the serial receivers, the SRXL2s, some of them don't have the button. Some of them do. So just pay attention to that. All right, cool. So we're gonna stick this in the hole.
Easy peasy.
See where it goes? It's a pretty good fit, guys. Look at this. So it's right there, right? So that's one way you can do it. The other way you can do it is you can try to vie for a position back here. Good luck, because you're never gonna get your receiver in there, okay? So what that means is that we're gonna need to plug this in at some point and get it energized. So let's make sure we have enough cable. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put the wires where I think they're gonna need to be. Okay, so obviously we have the ailerons, elevator, and throttle. Okay, so we already kind of know where most of the stuff plugs in based on past experience. So signal goes up. That's gonna go in channel 1 because it's our non-smart ESC. Then this is the ailerons. So the ailerons are gonna go somewhere in here. In fact, why don't we, channel 2?
Yeah.
Why don't we go ahead and set up the radio setup right now, and then we can come back to that so we don't skip over a bunch of steps.
Okay.
Because some of you guys are not gonna know from experience, you're gonna know from watching this video. So of course we could just tell you, or we could teach you. We're gonna teach you rather than tell you. That's what we do on Brian Phillips RC. If you wanna help support Brian Phillips RC and all the work that we do to help advance this hobby and sell lots of planes for these different manufacturers, aircraft, and weed whackers on Brian Phillips RC, then all you have to do is look no further than the links to all sorts of choices, Patreon, PayPal. We just turned on membership. We just got that approved today. We only did that because they were bribing us on YouTube.
Yes.
If nobody signs up, don't feel bad. We already made a few bucks on the opportunity for you to send money to us in that route. Just keep in mind, YouTube gonna get their cut because they're like the Godfather, and they're gonna get their cut before we get anything. So if you send us money, you'll be supporting YouTube and all the things that they believe in.
But also us.
But mostly us. The vast majority goes to us. But anyway, we just want you guys to understand, we only did it because they bribed us. We wouldn't have otherwise turned it on because we already had PayPal, the begging site, okay? We try not to beg. For years, we went without it. And we appreciate you guys on Patreon that support us from our hearts to yours. We really appreciate it. But we also don't feel like we're in a position that we should be doing that. And so when you support us in that way, we really are happy that you do that. But we resisted for many, 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 many moons because we felt like the best way to support us, other than PayPal, which is one-time gifts. Just remember, we're like friends and family. If you donate, you have to pay fees too. And that means that whatever you give us is depreciated by that much, okay? It is the lowest fees that we found. Patreon is the second lower fees, and then YouTube membership is the highest fee structure. Just so you guys know how that works, okay? Then, buy planes from the links and forget about these 3, because then you win. FMS wins in this case because they sent us this plane for review, just like we've done hundreds of others. Don't worry, I don't need any more planes. I have hundreds of them. I do this because I love this hobby and I want to see you have success. And they go out on a limb to send us stuff knowing that we're going to point out mistakes they made, which is crazy. And yet they keep doing it.
You might crash it.
That's right. Or I might crash it like I did the last one, which would be hilarious if we crashed the Eagle into the Eagle killing zone that was most recently known for being a Fox killing zone.
Yeah.
Because they also sent us that one. Okay, anyway,
It's
before I
only
get myself in
animal
trouble.
This doesn't have like a specific, we're just gonna go with that.
So anyway, what I'm saying is those different ways of supporting us are much appreciated, but we always come back to buy the planes that you love. If you don't love this one, don't buy it. Buy something you do love. There's always stuff in the background. There's tons of videos we've done in recent past. And if you don't know what you want and you're just using this as a gauge to like, hey, can I figure out the RC? Am I gonna be ready enough to do this? Yes, you will, first of all, because you can follow our video and you can just do what we do. Or alternatively, you can do it your way. And if you deviate too much, I won't be able to help you when you ask questions, okay? So try to do it our way, adopt that. And like where we put our switches and stuff like that and the techniques that we use, and it'll be easier for me to help you when you have questions come up. We try to answer questions in the comments, but we have found that it's impossible for us to honestly keep up. So we do our best. So anyway, guys, if you're commenting and you don't hear replies like you used to, that's because there's just so many of them, we can't get to them all, but we'll try our best, okay? So give it a good college try. Also, memberships, there's a way for us to do priority comments with certain levels. So check the levels. If you want to do that, then I guess it's just going to give us a way to sort stuff. But PayPal, there's not really any benefit in that direction. And Patreon, we specifically don't list PayPal benefits or Patreon benefits, because if we do, then people overseas have to pay a VAT, a value-added tax. So we specifically and directly do not list benefits. The benefits are what we're already doing. If you're supporting us on YouTube, you're supporting us for what we've already chosen to do because we're doing it at free will and you're supporting us at free will. Okay, so it's not, what's that thing they say? Quid pro quo.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, it's not that. I actually said it right. It's a miracle. So what is a quid pro quo, and in writing, generally in most cases, is that we do work with these manufacturers. They send them to us, we review them. You guys buy them. When you do buy them, we get credit for that. That's good. That's how we fund our channel. We don't want to ever be accused of not being forthright about that, because that is a big part of what we do here, okay? So if this thing sucks, we are gonna tell you it sucks, and many of you will still buy it. But you'll know what's wrong with it, and then you can fix it. All right, cool. So next thing's next. Let's go ahead and get this thing turned on now that we've showed you how to support us. Okay, so I'm gonna cancel them back, go to add new model. We previously created heli, so we're gonna go to an acro, just like that. It's a picture of an airplane. We're gonna create. So this, of course, is an NX10. You can copy along with an NX6 or an NX8, but you may find, and by the way, it takes longer if you have tons of models. There is a limit to like 250 model memory, but I also have an SD card here, which is a micro. And there's also another one about here on the main board inside. And so if you ever do get one of these transmitters and you say, hey, what's the limit? The limit's 250 models, okay? So model select is where we just came from. Model type is what we just said is acro. If you change that, it'll clear the model. Model name, this is where we type in the name, 166 model, colon space, and you can change the numbers, but the associated value with that number will not necessarily change. You have to go in and change that within the raw data and text if you ever decide to do that. Okay, so just a heads up there. So we're gonna scroll in, and yes, I do, full disclosure, use a legacy keyboard. Yours might look different. I like this. If you like that, go to system setup and choose it. So we're gonna scroll in the name and come right back. All right, so we have the FMS F-15 V2 64mm, and why do we do that? Because it is a plane, and you're probably getting another one that's a different size. So aircraft type, this is a normal type because we have a Y cable going to one servo, no, this looks one servo, has been assigned to 2 control surfaces. Now, if you were to do dual ailerons, you would have to split your wires and choose 2 different ports to plug into, and that's actually fine should you go ahead and do that. But just remember, flaperons are also another option that open up the flap menu, okay? If you don't do that, it won't be open. Now, you can set up flaperons without actually plugging in the other side, okay? So if you wanna have a flaperon configuration and you don't wanna have to relearn your positions for your servos, then you can actually set this up now knowing that at some point in the near future, you might cut that cable and go ahead and separate the 3 wires and extend them with solder, you know, adding a few inches of length so you can reach to the receiver. So you can set that up now. You just don't ever actually hook up the other side, so there's no real drawback, okay? But just understanding that we're not doing that right now, but you would set that right now if you knew you wanted to switch over to flaprons, okay? So the other thing too is you can also set up like this, 1 aileron, 1 flap, if you knew for sure you were going to upgrade to a single acting servo for flaps. That now you can have 2 flaps that are controlled on a Y cable. So like you can have 1 flap here with a single servo and 1 flap here with a single servo. And then the inboard flaps, you just need to make sure that the output of that servo, it's laying down so that the output is the same direction. Typically when you mount servos, like here, I'll just pick up the plane so I can show you what I'm talking about. When you mount the servos, there's an output movement. It's gonna move a certain direction, okay? These are gonna move opposite because they're mounted the same way, okay? See that? Those are mounted in the same direction, okay? Well, they're mounted in opposite directions. And so they're not gonna move like this. They're gonna move like in opposite directions. And that means 1 aileron goes up, 1 aileron goes down. In a dual aileron configuration, you could do differential where one goes up higher than the other, and then one goes down lower than the other, okay? And vice versa. So when you give like a roll right, you know, like roll this way, then this one is gonna go up higher than this one goes down. Or up higher when this one goes down. You see what I'm saying? Up higher because there's more efficiency on the upward stroke. Now you can do reverse differential too, just so you know. But that is a function of dual ailerons. You can also do that within flaperons, but with mixing, okay? Flaperons are gonna be just dedicated around setting up the flap menu so that you have access to that. Now, if you set up a single inboard flap servo, you'll dedicate that right now in your configuration file so that if you add it later, you don't have to go back and relearn your servo positions because there is no action from the stabilizer on your flaps. So the reason that I'm doing this is because I feel that it would be almost as easy to add a servo for inboard flaps as it would be to add flaperons. And I don't like the way flaperons work on this type of plane. So I'm gonna go ahead and just go with 1 aileron, 1 flap, okay? Yes, that's right, I'm adding that into my setup even though it's not necessary because it's not gonna be used, okay? Not yet, right? And then don't be confused by the tail type. The tail type is just, there is nothing, okay? So, but we still have a rudder servo, okay? Then I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna change the image from standard. And I think this one, I don't think they have an F-15 in here, but they do have like that Habu. That's probably as close as it's gonna get. Wait, they do have an F-15. Don't they?
Clear back at the beginning, is there one?
Maybe I'm thinking of the A-10. No. And they just have quads over here and then helis. So I'll just set it to the Habu looking thing. Okay, did I go past? I did. Okay, so now we walk back out. Flight mode setup is gonna be helpful, but you know, yeah, you do kind of have to set it up. So we'll just assign flight mode to my gear switch. Now let's talk about this for a sec. I'm gonna choose switch A, but you could also choose switch D. That's a 3-position switch. Switch A is a 2-position switch. Now, why do I need to set a switch on this plane for a flight mode? Like, why do you need that, Brian? Well, you need that because we're gonna use it for AS3X and SAFE. So SAFE is gonna be sensor-aided flight or sensor-assisted flight envelope, and that's gonna automatically level the plane. It operates within the AS3X. Okay, AS3X is artificial 3-axis stabilization, and so that's why this receiver is spatially aware. It knows the position of the plane relative to where you started from, okay? Which is gonna be set in the Ford programmer, which we'll show you this here in a minute. But at the end of the day, when you have a stabilizer in an aircraft, the stabilizer can do a variety of functions, not the least of which is resisting environmental impact that you didn't create and call out from a stick movement, okay? So if I tell it to roll left, then it's gonna know I want the ailerons to, if I'm gonna roll left, okay, then the left aileron is gonna go up It's going to roll that down, and then the right aileron is going to go down, okay? And it's going to roll left, right? Now, if I pull back on the elevator, it's going to move that elevator up, and it's going to make the nose go up, okay? If I pull back, or if I push up, then it's going to push down, and then make the nose go down. So it's going to pitch the plane down, or it's going to pitch the plane up. If you're not moving that stick, and all of a sudden the nose pitches up, it's going to say, oh my goodness, what happened? Bigfoot? No. Wind? Whatever. Thermal? Did you hit a tree? I don't know. Depends. So what's going to happen is it's going to resist by going the opposite of what the environmental impact is, whether that's a thermal or some wind blowing on it or a bounce on the ground that was not impacted by you, okay? So it's just making a decision. It says, okay, environment, what are you? Change equals 0, then I make no decision. Change equals 10, I make a decision to counter it. In terms of absolute value on the pitch axis, or in terms of absolute value on the roll axis, or in terms of the absolute value on the yaw axis. So it's paying attention to those 3 positions, and it makes decisions, notwithstanding your stick input. Now, there's also a priority that you can set where you are actually prioritizing your control authority over this plane versus the sensor assisted flight envelope safe or AS3X, artificial 3-axis stabilization. But just so you guys understand, the AS3X is all running inside of there locally, not here. We talk back and forth for telemetry data, which has to do with positional gyroscopic effects and things like this, and you get G-forces and all that cool stuff, but not pack voltage, of course. Why would we have that? That only comes when you add in a more sophisticated avian ESC, which is quite a bit more expensive, and we'll talk about that in another video, but you can get pack voltage from the lead there, or you can go up to a full telemetry equipped receiver rather than this, which is considered a flyby telemetry, which also speaks to the amount of range you've got, because as you're flying by, you'll get updated with telemetry data, and then you go to the outside of the circuit and you may not see it, and then you fly by and you get your update, and you fly by and you get your update, and so on and so forth. On the telemetry equipped receivers, you'll notice that they have 2 antennas, so you have larger range, more robust communications. And make no mistake, this is duplex communication. We talk to the transmitter, and the transmitter talks to us. But we only do forward programming to configure this, and then when we're done, we exit forward programming, and it is stored to memory. Okay, so we don't have to maintain a forward programming connection in order to control this aircraft as it flies. We only need to do that for radio setup. All right, so that was a lot. If you're new to the hobby and you're just like, holy crap, Brian, what did you just say? Don't worry, we'll be talking about that in future videos or past videos. There's like 1,800 to choose from right now. So just go watch like 17 or 1,800 of them and you'll pick up on all that stuff. All right, so getting back to the point. So we wanted to set switch A. So now switch A is going to dictate flight modes, okay? See how it just goes between 0 and 1 now? Okay, flight mode 0, or it's flight mode 1, flight mode 2. And 0 versus 1 means the position 0 compared to the position 1, okay? So anybody familiar with digital circuits will understand that 0 is the beginning of the numeric sequence, not 1. And that's why these switches are 0, 1, and 2. Of course, that's stupid because most people would just rather it say 1, 2, 3, if you ask me. All right, so flight mode setup. That's done. Spoken flight mode. This is where I set up and I go above and beyond. You don't have to do this, but I'm gonna scroll down, way down to here. So we may even pause for a minute. Okay, so we're getting close here, folks. So we're gonna go, there's AS3X, there's safe. There's AS3X, boop. Now this one's gonna be safe, but it's just a label, folks. It's just a label. It's not actually changing what happens. We're just telling this piece of equipment here to say an audible thing when a certain condition happens. Okay, so now I'm gonna take and I'm gonna go in here and cancel and clear. Now I can type in AS3X. Okay, so A. Okay, so AS3X. This label will be on the screen during normal operating mode. So we want flight mode 2 to be cancel. This one's gonna be safe. Okay, so safe. Okay, now it's only gonna call it out once we go into normal flight mode, okay? So now channel assign, we're probably not gonna need to mess with, but we're just gonna go through here for kicks. Auxiliary 1 is gonna be predefined for flaps. If we need it for something, we'll talk about that a little later, but I'm gonna go ahead and reserve it for flaps given our configuration. Now, auxiliary 2 is tied to B. That's gonna be flap mode is where I'd normally configure that, but since we're not using anything, I wanna make sure to keep channel 2, auxiliary 2, opened for use on something else. Auxiliary 3, auxiliary 4, and auxiliary 5 are not really doing anything right now, but we'll talk about what they'll do later. Okay, we can walk back out to the regular mode.
Safe mode, AS3X mode, safe mode, AS3X mode.
You hear all that talking? That means nothing, it's just a label, okay? We'll set that up in a minute. Now, let's set up a timer. Okay, so timer, let's go ahead and go with 5 minutes. That's probably about right. Anything over 25, we're gonna activate the timer and keep it running. That's a 1-out timer. Okay, now, at 1 minute, I want a verbal alarm where she's gonna say 1 minute left. And then at 10 seconds, I want a voice countdown. At expiration, I want tone and vibrate with a tone every minute thereafter. Okay, now I'm gonna set up dual rates in Expo. I'm gonna turn this to switch F. At the lowest position, I want the least amount of Expo, 5%. You can just take my word for it on what we're doing here. This is gonna soften the sticks. Oops. This is gonna give us more softening and reduce the rates. So that's a lot of Expo and less rates. That's where we're gonna start from. And then that's less Expo and the regular full rate. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna do that on all 3 control channels. These are the primary flight control surfaces. And you're probably thinking to yourself, or the axis of control, like pitch, yaw, roll. And you're like, but Brian, hold on a second. You don't even have a rudder. Yep, and I'm still setting this. You wanna know why? Because we do have a rudder, and the rudder controls the steerable landing gear, the nose gear. But we're gonna also have a rudder because we're gonna take some clear plastic and we're gonna stick it in there, okay? So that's where we're gonna start. Throttle cut, you definitely want that turned on to switch H. Now let's test that right now. Move the stick, it stays at -100, move the stick down, throttle cuts off. Move the stick and it's live. Turn the throttle cut on, call it out, that's a good safety measure. Flap system is gonna be attached to switch B. There's gonna be no change in output whatsoever. Okay. Timer set, everything's set. Now we just need to basically fire this thing up. But at this point, we can walk over here. I'm gonna clear my timer. We can walk over here and we can tell exactly where to plug everything in. You remember that earlier? We had to do that. So now we can just look inside of our little bag of tricks up here and we can look at our screen. It says throttle, then aileron, then elevator, then rudder, then gear, okay? So you're like, but Brian, we don't have gear. Don't worry, we'll talk about that too. All right, so this is the Y cable that goes to the ailerons, excuse me, the elevator, because there are split elevators on this. Now, here's the other cool thing you can do. You can take and you can separate this and make your elevators act as televons on this plane if you want, which is cool, because then you can have this one go up and this one go down, and vice versa. And then you can have them act together as an elevator and as ailerons. That is something that people have done on this model and had good success. Then you can set this as flaps if you want to. But I would like to keep my roll rate a little bit more consistent with what the expectation is for others that are gonna buy this plane, okay? If you decide to do that, some others have actually set these up as ailerons and then set these up as televons. And they've done both, which is pretty cool. So if you set these as flaperons and you set that as televons, you would have a pretty good amount of roll rate and you could adjust the amount of roll rate you get from the elevator. And then you could make up for your roll rate when you have flaperons down, which is pretty cool because generally you lose roll rate when you're in flaperon deployment. Now, what else happens in flaperon deployment, camera crew? You go all the way down like this, you have no more down. So you only lift which means you effectively reduce your roll rate by as much as 50%, if not more, okay? So if you do a half deployment, then you keep a little bit of that. So you have a little bit of change on both sides, but they stay down. Or in spoilerons, you don't seem to lose as much of your roll authority, but you still lose some. That's true for AS3X and SAFE, as well as your input. Because we don't have rudders to help supplement our actual roll, okay? Because rudder will generally induce roll, just like ailerons, but it just has the added benefit of yawing the aircraft. So usually when I have full deployment of flaperons, I'll mix in rudder so that I can help to roll the plane or get that movement when I have less deflection available. We're not going to do any of that on this plane. We're just going to set it up as a regular aileron and a regular tail and a regular no rudders that are going to actually be controlling the steerable nose gear. Okay. So anyway, hopefully I answered some questions in advance that you guys are going to have. If you decide to do that, that's fine. Go for it. It's going to be a little bit more advanced, but also just keep in mind you have to cut this cable now. It says elevator. You'd have to cut one set or cut both. I would just cut one. You have to build an end on the other side, okay? And then you have two connectors like this. You have to identify which one's which. Easiest way is plug one in, move your elevator. Which one moves? Now I know. Plug the other one in where it's appropriate, and this will lay out differently if you set up telebonds, okay? It will tell you where to plug them in because they will set up different, okay? Same thing with flaperons because it's gonna say aileron 1, aileron 2, or something like that, okay?
Right and left.
Yep. So now also, what else do we have to deal with? We have to deal with thrust reverse if it works. Generally, when we have this yellow cable on a Predator ESC, we have access to thrust reverse. So I'm gonna plug that into my gear plug. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's just the signal portion. And then 6 is for flaps. So we're gonna go into 5, just plugging it into the top wire. Okay, now I don't even know if that's gonna work, but we'll find out shortly, okay? Now we're gonna plug our elevator into the 3rd port. How do I know? Because we look over at the monitor. It says where it's supposed to be, okay? Then we have ailerons. Ailerons are coming from this single cable that goes to a Y cable. Really wish the Y cable would have been longer because that would have made it so much easier to split these off. I'd really kind of like to do flaperons, but the thing is, get this. Currently, we also have this, which is our rudder. Rudder goes to channel 4. So you're gonna notice what I'm talking about here, guys, really quick. Guess what? We would be out of channels, but if you're doing flaperons instead of flaps, you would be reserving this for flaps, okay? Unless you want to do a full length flap for landings, which would be pretty cool. So also, if you do an AR 8260T, you would get full telemetry, pack voltage. Of course, you have to pierce these lines and bring a little plug into the side. And you would get the added benefit of additional channels. So you could do telebonds, flaperons, and inboard flaps, as well as retracts if you decided to add retracts somehow or some way. But it's way overkill, and that's a lot more expensive receiver.
And you'd want to do an 8360T
8360T
for AS3X and SAFE.
8360T. Sorry, I said that wrong. My apologies, guys. Thank you for catching that.
Yeah.
All right, so our next move is, what do we do with all these wires and everything? We got to make sure they're out of the way so that we turn this on, it doesn't spring to life and cut our cables. But we also kind of need to know where this is going to go so that we can have everything positioned right. That is going to be really close to our stuff, and that's just the way it's going to be. Okay. I don't see that there's an easier way to accomplish our goal. And then also, let's talk about the depth of this. This is going to go down just a little teeny bit, so we should be fine. And that's going to reach in there. Okay, let's see if it reaches in and hits our button or something crazy. Okay, we have no tape in there, so it's going to be a little bit thicker here in a minute. Some people would be inclined to just do this. Okay, don't be that person. I'll show you what to do. Okay, right?
Yes, right.
Because there's like, it ain't gonna stay like that. Stick this down, stick this down. It's kind of a, yep. See, and that would go if I had this under control, which I don't yet, okay? But the nose is not a problem, that's the key. All right, so now what we need to do is we need to inevitably get this tape down. So we're gonna just take some double-sided tape here. Double-sided tape is readily available from other things that we've used in other projects. If you don't have double-sided tape and you literally don't have any other better solution, you can literally use Velcro, or you can literally use glue. I have glued these things in. Yes, I know that seems very cheapskatish of me, but if you knew me, you would understand. That's perfectly normal. Okay, so I'm gonna stick this down. This actually comes from a Lemon RX receiver from years ago. And by the way, Lemon makes a good receiver too, and we link to them. So if you ever decide you wanna buy one of those, the setup is very different, but you still get a lot of the cool telemetry features and things like that, which is nice. And they're a little bit more economical. But I have been very happy with Spectrum stuff, and so we have been using them for years, and the forward programming makes it so much easier. So just remember, guys, if you're brand new to the hobby and you're trying to get your feet under you, don't go for the cheapest, go for the easiest to set up. And then once you've established how to set it up, you can go and mimic that setup on a couple competitive offerings, and we'll try to help you with those as they come to light, okay? We've done that for years, we'll keep doing it, all right? So now we'll just slide this in so it goes all the way forward as far as we can get it, and try to keep it lengthwise with the plane. And then I'm gonna stick my thumb in here. I'm gonna sneak upon him and stick my thumb in it.
And you can still reach your bind button.
Yep. So now that's pressed down, so that's spatially aware. So if the plane goes up, it's gonna know it went up. If it goes down, it's gonna know it went down. If it rolls, it's gonna know it rolled, and so on and so forth. If it yaws, it's gonna know it yawed, right? So now what are we gonna do with all this crap? Good question, me. First things first, we are gonna try to get it out of the way of all this. So I think what we're gonna do is we're probably going to take all this and just pull it back as far as possible, okay? And then we're gonna have to tie it. So I'm gonna grab a couple zip ties. And you're probably thinking to yourself, Brian, why are you doing that now? You haven't even set it or bound it or any of that stuff, Brian. And you would be correct in your assessment. I haven't done those things, and I don't want to have them done just quite yet, because until I bind it, until I set this straight, I don't want it to cut any of my cables. I don't think it will, but I don't think that servo has enough strength to do that. But over time, you don't want to bind the servo, and you certainly don't want to cut your cables, right? So until you can control the cables, you better just do something about it, okay? All right, so we're gonna tie this. I'm just trying to decide if I think my bundle's gonna have to fall to this side, okay? So it's gonna go something like that, right? And I've had people comment in the comments about how they like watching me do cable management. I do not understand that. It's like the bane of my existence, and yet for whatever reason, people seem to think I have a handle on doing it. I don't know that I'm any better at it than anybody else, but if you enjoy watching it, great.
Those people should really stop encouraging you in your cable management.
Okay, so watch this. So now we're gonna tie this. I kind of want to fold it over one more time, if I can get it to fold. Because that linkage there is going to be a problem at some point. So you see, what I want to do is I want to go around it and get that to fall down, because that'd be ideal.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to just send this under, okay, like this. I'm going to get it started. Just the first click. Okay, so it's ratcheted once or twice. Now I should be able to kind of fold this. And then notwithstanding the fact that I've clicked it once or twice, I still have enough to get around it, you see? You see? Then I can try to just slide this down. And this is just one of those things where it's like if you've done it 50,000 times, it does make it a little bit easier, but it's still a pain in the neck. Okay. Okay, so now, and you're like, what? Oh, I thought you wanted you to push it down there. I did. It just didn't work out the way I was hoping. So now I can set this down so it's underneath the control arm. And then guess what? Look at that. We've got pretty good clearance. It's not perfect, but it's a heck of a lot better than it was. And there you have it, folks. I don't like the fact that that is so close to getting pummeled by that armature. But you know what? That's probably about as good as it's gonna get, folks.
Yeah.
So there you go. It looks a lot better than it did, and it is admittedly better, but not perfect. Right, now let's see if we can put this canopy on now, or cockpit. Okay, so the cockpit, boop. What are we hitting? We're hitting the connectors.
There it goes.
But look at that.
Yep.
Goes on there, looks sweet, amazing. All right, now lift that off of there. Now, we're ready to bind. Okay, so how do we bind this plane? First things first, we need to control the plane, make sure it doesn't like take off or anything stupid like that. So we're gonna clear the timer, put our throttle cut on, stick down, neutral on everything else, neutral and neutral, okay? We're not using this switch yet, but we might later. And we're gonna set something up for switch G shortly. We'll come right back to that. Okay, so now we're gonna plug this in. Notice this is an IC3, similar to an EC3, except it's got the data pin, and it's a different color, and it's got pants that you can pull down and get to the solder joints, as opposed to an EC3, where the solder joint gets sucked into the connector, so it makes it a real pain in the neck to work on. Also, this is serviceable. An EC3 is not. An XT60 is, except you have heat shrink that has to be heated, slid back, and then potentially slid back on, so I almost always have to redo it. But your polarity is the same, and guess what? These pins and sockets are the same. So in you go. Okay, so plugged in. Now I'm gonna reach in here with my pinky, press the button, look for the flashy light. I see the flashy light. Now I'm gonna click, I'm gonna scroll down to bind, and I'm gonna bind it. Here we go. Holding the plane. Telemetry. Okay, now it's auto-configuring whatever sort of telemetry is available. All right, cool. So elevator, ailerons, and rudder. Pretty cool, guys. Look at this. We have a rudder, and it's not binding. Really nice. Okay. Now let's look at the rest of our surfaces real quick. Roll left, incorrect. Roll right, incorrect. So quick, we'll click, go to servo setup, travel, and reverse. Ailerons are reverse. Roll left, roll right, elevator up, elevator down. That's actually going to be correct, but I need to actually rudder, correct, and correct. Okay, cool. So our direction of travel is correct. So now we need to get our linkages installed. And you're like, but Brian, what was your presence of mind, in not having that attached? Well, the reason we did that, we didn't put our linkages on, is because we knew that there was an extremely high probability. You notice how hard that snapped? Mm-hmm. We have full purchase on that now, okay? We knew that we were gonna have to do this at some point. So I'm gonna come down to the end of the island, make sure our vertical stabilizers don't get broke. Now, what we need to do is we need to center these, okay? So these were already worked earlier, you recall, I'm sure. And we've got our little fuel tube here. And they're wanting us in what holes?
Here we go.
Outside. And then the middle on the arm? Really? That's weird. The middle.
Yeah, that's kind of
Okay, so we're going to the middle on this servo control horn. Oops. Holy cow, that thing don't want to go in.
It's not a very big hole.
Yeah, I hope we don't have to open it up. That'd be a pain. But if we do, it's not the end of the world. It's just annoying. Come on. Come on. There it is. It's going out. Okay, it's in. There we are. All right, so now, see how hard that is to turn? When they're hard like that, that is a good recipe to breaking them. And when I say breaking them, I mean catastrophically breaking them. So don't mess around, just get your pliers. So, what do I want to do with this? I want this to be level with the surface like that on the outside hole. So that means I need to hold this, secure it, and then twist this out. 1/2 of a turn, okay? And you can see when I sort of temporarily slide that in, we're definitely up. So I'm gonna go out a little bit more. And remember, you can always adjust your spline position if you have to. Get them a nice low shot so they can see what the heck I'm doing there, cam crew. You see this? From here. See this? From here. You see this? When I line this up, you can tell it needs to move out. There's one whole turn. That's probably about right. So now, how do I know it's right? Because I've held this with my fingertips. And then I know when I line this up, That's gonna get us just past center. Now I can press and it's done. What?
Oh, middle hole on the control arm, outside.
Middle on this,
Yep.
outside on that.
Okay.
Now the elevator moves. Woohoo! Cool. Okay. So now the next move is to do the other side. Where did I lay that thing? Or did I lay that thing? Oh, it's right here on the wing. All right, so we do the exact same process here. So I'm gonna slide this into the middle hole. There's 3 holes, okay? I'm just kind of rotating it a little bit. So once you get in the middle, goodness gracious, great balls of fire. I don't want to get the drill out, but you could if you really wanted to work harder, because it's going to go. I already know it's going to go because it's in. There it is, guys. Now you do want that tight. Nobody wants a sloppy hole. Well, at least at the beginning. Hold that, twist this out twice or so, and then hold this and see how we're looking. Yeah, it's pretty close. I think I need to go half a turn more. Now, I'm gonna do just one more little test. Now, some of you are probably thinking, oh, it's so weird. I swear there was an SU-27 that you crashed because you didn't check the linkages. Yeah, okay. I'm just gonna show you this, okay? I'm pulling hard. I'm a strong guy. I can break things. That doesn't break, okay? You see how many threads are out? You see how many threads are out? There's a lot of penetration here still, okay? I'm pulling hard. If it pulls harder than that and it rips out, then that means there's not enough purchase on the threads. That's too far. I gotta go out one more half, okay? Holding. Oh yeah, it's there, guys. Okay, slide that, snap it, then run this out so it's just shy of the edge so it can move free. And I don't even think I got it, look. I gotta go out another half a turn.
Just a little bit? Or
I have to go out another half a turn. So how do you pop those free without breaking them? That is a great question, folks.
Very careful.
Sometimes what you have to do is you have to get a bigger flat-bladed screwdriver. Okay, a bigger flat-bladed screwdriver, meaning you have a wider surface like this. And that wider surface is gonna go in here, and then it's gonna pry at a straight angle. See that? Then you can hold this with your thumb and pull that out, okay? Now I'm gonna go out one more half a turn. There's another half. Notice I don't need to use the pliers anymore, which is nice. Oh yeah, that's perfect. Okay, good. And then back down. Now, I'm just gonna load this heavily, and load this heavily. That thing is not pulling out, okay? If it was gonna pull out, it would have pulled out with that. Also keep in mind the amount of actual structural load that you put on that threaded portion depends on the plane, a lot. So for instance, on this J11, which is the same as the SU-30, except it's a licensed copy to China, okay, of the Soviet plane, this mechanism is a lot more robust here to move that than what you're gonna have on this plane, okay? So just to give you an idea, when you think about buying this F-15, don't worry, you're gonna eventually get here. Show them the difference, you see that? Mm-hmm. Show them the landing gear. This is also an FMS offering, okay? Show them the twin EDFs, okay? Mm-hmm. This is a more sophisticated plane. It also has an air brake that comes out on the top, okay? Totally sweet. Did you show them the squishing landing gear? I really want you to touch them.
Oh.
You see that? There's springs. These things are super sophisticated. I don't even have all the ordnance on there. There's gear door, there's lights, all sorts of things. Nav lights. That's what you're working up to, folks. When you get a plane like this, just remember, it's not like you're never gonna get there, because you could be flying something like this in not too long if you're doing it right. But we wanna help prevent you getting the wrong plane at the beginning and then quitting before you get a chance to get to something sweet like that. Now, that's not to take anything away from the F-15, it's just more a matter of, okay, look at the difference. These planes are definitely in different echelons, okay? This is an F-15 fighter, and I'm not talking about the F-15 compared to the Chinese knockoff of the, SU-27,
right.
Okay? I'm not talking about Sikorsky versus, any American company or anything like that. I'm just talking about models here. This is not a huge difference in size. Actually, it is. It's almost double the size, okay? It's got to be more than double the weight. This uses a 6S battery. This is going to use a 3 or 4S. Okay, this has 1 EDF. I don't even know if you, yeah, you can see the 11 bladed fan in there, but not very good. This one has 2. It's a totally different echelon. I mean, just look at the difference in the size of the nose cone. Okay, look at this, guys. This should give you some scale. Okay, it's a lot bigger and a lot more sophisticated and a lot heavier and a lot more complicated. But we're using virtually the same flight control system to control this one, which is pretty cool. All right, so let's talk about this. We're gonna turn this plane. Should be done with the manual except for the CG here in a little bit. Okay, elevator up, elevator down, roll left, roll right. Okay, yaw left, yaw right. Okay, so everything is working except for we've got a really bad disparity in position on the nose gear. How do we know there's a bad position on the nose gear here? It's turning significantly to one side or the other, so we have to adjust that. How do you adjust that? Good question. Normally you would actually make a mechanical adjustment somewhere along the lines, but what's happened is they have the set screw that bites the shaft. 1.5 millimeters. I said 1 earlier and I misspoke. Sorry guys, that's 1.5 millimeters. So if we undo this, we should be able to straighten it, but what's gonna happen is you won't, because you see how it just squared it? So what's gonna happen is this is machined such that you aren't gonna be able to bite it on the bite point if you wanna center it, okay? So I just let it fall down, and then guess what? Look at that. Now it's straight as an arrow. Okay. I mean, it's not perfect. It needs to go just a little bit to its own right, to my left. How do I know? I'm just rolling it back and forth. Oops. Now the alternative is you go down and grind. You go down and grind a new flat on your shaft there. And then that flat will allow you to mesh up with it, okay? The other thing you can do is you can take this off, undo this one screw here, and then you can move to a different spline location. And then that becomes your neutral. The problem is you need this to be square. If it's not square, you won't get even amount of adjustment or throw on the output, okay? So hopefully all of that made sense, and now you're probably thinking to yourself, cool, now how do I turn safe on? Well, you have to actually program it, and we're gonna do that next. So this is gonna be the forward programming portion of it, but because I'm thinking about center of gravity right now, we're gonna mark the center of gravity and test it, because we can.
Okay.
Okay, so the center of gravity, I already saw it once, now I just have to find it again.
There you go.
85 to 90 millimeters from the leading edge back, okay? So 85 to 90 millimeters from the leading edge of the wing. So it'd be from right here back, okay? Now, this plane has fixed gear. So I'm gonna obviously be marking the bottom side of this because there'll always be down there cantilevering the plane, keeping it heavy on the bottom. If you have retracts, you typically test with the gear down. But just keep in mind, some planes, you know, they're coming in hot and then you put the gear back and they shift your CG back. On a jet, that's good because you generally want to fly with the CG about right, but then you want to land with a little bit back so you can get into high alpha easier. High alpha, of course, is when you have the nose up. Okay, so we've got this thing zeroed, and now we're going to measure out 85 to 90 from here. So 85 to 90. So here's 85. Okay, so just coming out a little bit so I can get my finger in there. There's one mark. Okay. Coming out and just marking it. Now I can take my marker and come in here and follow that. And you're like, you really just mark it with a black marker? Yep, that's the way we do it. And honestly, guys, it works great. We almost never have problems with that. To be honest, once you kind of figure out where your battery goes, you don't have to have it marked. But then what happens is you'll get a different battery someday and it's gonna be slightly different. Now you can do this one of two ways. You can measure 5 millimeters or you can just measure the entire distance. I prefer to measure the entire distance because if I made a mistake on the first one, I'll catch it. And then once you know you're about right, which I do now, then you can go with your 5 millimeter mark. If you wanna double check your work, you can go to 5. Good enough. Yep, we got a 5 millimeter difference. Okay, now why do we have 2 marks? because one is the front and one is the back. And what you're going to do is you're going to tend to measure from both and figure out how your plane balances before you determine if you're satisfied. Okay, so we already have our battery that we're going to be using. 30C 2200 milliamp. Okay, so I'm going to put my finger on the back holes first. It goes nose heavy. On the front holes, it goes pretty much balanced. So that would be a nose heavy plane. So this battery needs to shift back all the way, okay? All the way back, 4S 2200. On the back hole, we're nose heavy. On the front holes, we're level, okay? So what that tells me is this. We're probably gonna have to add weight if we want it to be tail heavy. What is the fatal flaw of a tail heavy plane? Everybody says it like this: when you're new in the hobby, tail heavy planes fly once, meaning you crash on the maiden. Nose heavy planes, they fly extremely stable, which means sometimes you don't have enough elevator to actually land, okay? I've had that happen almost once. It's kind of scary. Both are bad. You want the center of gravity about right on a maiden. Oh, it goes further. I just was trapped in there. That's good. It just went further. I didn't push hard enough. That should be a lot better now. Okay, so now on the back hole, we're nose heavy. On the front hole, we're tail heavy. And we're slightly more tail heavy on the front hole than we are on the back hole being nose heavy. Does that make sense the way I said it?
Yep.
So when I'm on this back mark, it wants to lean slightly forward. Okay, on the front mark, it wants to lean back somewhat, but a little bit more excessive. Why? As a more skilled pilot, and as you get to being more skilled, you want to keep your elevator nice and peppy and sensitive. You can always kill that with a little bit more expo, or you can bring the CG forward a little bit. You can find the exact balance where you want. But for me, I'm satisfied with that. So now what I do is I come in with a marker and I mark my plane so I can tell where I'm going to put the battery. So now I'm going to make a mark here and I'm going to say wires going this way. And then I'm just going to write 2200. Okay. And then I'm going to write 4S. Okay. And that arrow just denotes where the wire goes. And that's the way I do it. Now, you don't have to do it that way, but you can do it my way if you think it's a good way. I would suggest you do it my way. And look how clean this is, guys. That's very clean, very easy to do, easy to replicate. Okay, now we have to start flipping this thing over. We're going to set up thrust reverse, and we have to do AS3X in safe configuration, okay? So now we shouldn't need the manual for the rest of this, but we might, so we'll keep it handy. So coming around here, camera crew and I are going to stand behind the plane. Behind the plane is where you want to be, because then you can, last time you can check this. Elevator up, elevator down. Roll left, roll right. If you're not sure, hold the transmitter and move it. That's where I should go, that's where I should go. That's where I should go, that's where I should go. Look at the surface, study it. If it takes you time, that's fine. When you're a new pilot, things are going to take a little longer to connect the dots. Yaw left, yaw right. Notice there's barely any left and there's lots of right. That is a function of the design of that steering. I don't like it, okay? All right, click. Go to servo setup, travel, reverse. No, we're gonna go to travel, we're gonna go to rudder, and we're gonna go up to 150%. Now we're gonna see if we can move it still. Oh yeah. Now I'm gonna go from 150 down to like 145. So 145. So it gets us in a better position. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on the other surfaces to make sure we have vetted everything. Then we can jump into board programming. So we have everything working. You can go more or less on all the surfaces on this type of aircraft. The bind and flies you can't generally overdrive, but on these, I'll go ahead and, I don't even know if we need it, but I'll put these up and just see if I have any binding. I usually go back to only a little bit below full output. Okay, and then I wanna look inside of here and just see if there's any, oh yeah, we're not hitting anything, so we should be good. So I'll roll those at about 145%, and then same thing on the elevator. Just go all the way and then back it off just a hair. I like to back it off just a hair. Okay, so we have plenty of throw there. Okay, so that's good. Now you don't have to do that if you don't like it, you don't have to do it that way. Then the last thing, you just want to make sure everything's okay. So we had a conflict on our camera we had to deal with. Forward programming, connecting, make sure your battery's plugged in. You have to be live for it to work. Okay, so gyro settings, first time setup. Make sure everything's set up on the normal setup. Any changes, you'll have to redo it. Set them on a level, press continue. It is level. Okay, so you can do this or you can do it manually. And I'll show you what I mean by it is. Okay, so put it on its nose, hit continue. Okay, now look, it knows the direction we have the receiver. If you look at that picture, does that look consistent with where the receiver sits in our plane? Mm-hmm. Sure does, because it sits like that with the logo like this. Now, we know that's orientation 1, but watch what happens. You can see all the different orientations, okay? Those are the different ways you can have them. So we're in orientation 1. So we can continue. So now the gain channel is going to be set to right knob. So looks like right knob is on aux 3. Okay. That gives us the ability to adjustable, disconnected, dance 1, dance 1, okay? So it's rebooted. Now go back into forward programming. See that connection? That's your connection to your actual device. Pretty cool, huh? Gyro settings. Flight mode setup. Flight mode channel.
Safe mode. AS3X mode.
Why don't we use auxiliary? Let's use, well, hold on, let's think about this for a sec. Currently gear is, D is aux 1. Yeah, we're just gonna go to, why are we tied to D on aux 1? It's because we set up flaps? That's not right. And then the input's gonna be switch A. Okay. Okay, so now we're gonna look.
Safe mode.
It's not changing, so it didn't recognize that. So I can go back to this. And it looks like now it says aux and A. Okay, so I'm gonna walk out. Let's check this out. Go to monitor. So gear is being actuated and it is attached to switch A. So I don't know why it says D in that system. So I'm gonna go to system setup, disconnect RF, channel assign. Looks like aux 1 is locked out. You wanna know why? It's reserved for flaps the way I set up my wing type. So I can go to aux 2. So that's what we'll use. Okay, so now I'm gonna go down to, now you can do your assignment in system setup here. And you can make that assignment on aux 2 to that. Now I wanna set this to switch G right now while we're in here, and I'll tell you about that for thrust reverse later. Okay, now let's go back into forward programming and fix that problem. Now that we know our switch A is attached to auxiliary 2, the knob is attached to auxiliary 3, and flaps are reserved on auxiliary 1. Okay, so gyro settings, flight mode setup. Okay, so it's already correct, and it's already correct. Now it should just work. But it's not. Why is it not working? Oh, because we're supposed to go to aux 2. There we go. There you go. So 1 and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 3. Why 1 and 3 and not 1 and 2? Doesn't matter, because if you had a 3-position switch, you could do that. Okay, so it's active there, and it's active there. Now you could make AS3X not active with safe, which would be weird, but you can do it. So if you have a 3-position switch, you could do AS3X on, AS3X off, and safe mode on, and AS3X on. Okay, but we're not doing that. We're doing it on here. Okay. First time safe setup. Don't be afraid, it's very easy. This is already set most of the way. See, it just carried over from the last menu, but just click through it anyway. Then continue, flight mode 1, flight mode 3. I want safe mode in flight mode 3. So I put it in that mode. Now, if this receiver was mounted like this or like that, then you would have to correct for it. So like for instance, if you wanted your plane to always fly like this, then you could set that, but it's gonna fly up, okay? Or you could set it to be tipped a little bit, and that's what you can do here. So this is where you can level model and capture attitude. What?
-5.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that. Oh, timed out. If it ever does that, just go back in. Oh, it's like, it's pissed off because I'm out of level so far, I wonder. Let's see if it fails again. If it does, we'll reset the battery. Haha, it didn't like the position. I just don't believe this -5. There you go. I'm gonna do it again. There we go. So we got the same reading twice. That was a fluke. How did I know it was a fluke? Because I'm like, it isn't pitched at all, okay? Or hardly at all. So now next, so we're in mode 3. Safe mode is inhibited, so it's off. Self-level angle demand. Now AS3X mode is only on there. Safe is off. And you can set your envelope on where you want the maximum tip up or pitch up, pitch down, roll left, roll right. Of course, the yaw is not really controlled by that. And then you can apply it. Reset. Now watch, 2 dances. 1 dance, 2 dances. That means safe is on. Now, safe is activated, but not necessarily on because I happen to have the safe switch on. Okay, so now I'm gonna walk all the way out. Now watch this. I have safe on, AS3X on. Now, how else could you test? Well, let's start with the AS3X. Elevator up. That's one way to really clearly tell because it's gonna limit your amount of travel. Now, the other way to tell is with safe on. Safe will be active all the time. AS3X is only active after 25% or greater throttle. Trying to find the quickest route to level. Okay. Look at the elevator. Trying to level the aircraft to bring the nose up. Okay. Trying to bring the nose down. But otherwise, not doing anything. Now, AS3X, throttle cuts off. Test throttle. That is going backwards, so we will be changing that in a second. You may have noticed, okay? So AS3X is now active. So I'm gonna go up and I'm gonna go down. Come over here, all the way up on master gain, all the way up, all the way down, up, down. Come here. Come here, okay. We're gonna go up and we're gonna look for the elevator to go up and resist. Up, down. Okay, now, aileron up, it's gonna go up. It goes up. It goes down. That's the correct direction. Now we're gonna check this one. Up, down, okay? So they're all working. Now the rudder is kind of confusing because it like goes the opposite way you think because it's not back here, it's on the front of the plane. Okay, so when I rotate the plane, it sort of works, but it's hard to test. You'll just have to try that one on the ground a little bit. I always get confused on the nose gear because I'm so used to looking at the rudder. Come around here. So now let's set up our gains, our master gain. Gyro settings, AS3X settings, gains. See how it says 1X? Watch this. 4 times, and I have adjustable. Fixed or adjustable. They're all adjustable, okay? Where are they set? We already set it. See? So it should be adjustable, okay? So now watch this. You can hear the correction. Normally we would look at the rudder, but we'll go ahead and look at everything here. See how much you can see now? Up is up, down is down. I'm looking at the aileron here. Up is up, down is down. Now elevator, up is up, down is down. Now listen. Off. Because there's no gain, okay? I'm gonna take my nose off for just a sec. Little bit, lock, okay? So now, up is up, down is down. Up is up, down is down. Up is up, down is down. Now what's gonna happen is you'll take off and it'll start oscillating as you're flying forward, or it'll start oscillating, both at the same time because you have too much gain. Like you already have a self-induced oscillation here. You hear that? When I turn that off, it won't do it. When I turn it up halfway, it already starts to do it. So you'll have to test that. But what I like to do is I like to put it in 4x so I can showcase that quickly. I'm gonna go back to 1x and then I'm gonna put it in about middle setting. Now, why do I want it there? Because when I'm flying plane 1 compared to plane 2, compared to plane 160, compared to plane 140 that are all plug-in flies, I don't want to go from one plane to the next, to the next, to the next, and have to remember that setting. So I generally want it about the middle. So if it's a couple degrees off here or there, that's not going to make it unflyable, but you want to give yourself the best chance at success when you configure your plane from scratch the first time, okay? So that's what we hope we've helped you to do here. But there's one other weird thing going on here. Throttle cuts off. Watch this. That's a little bit weird. Why is it backward? Let's talk about that. First of all, we attached it to switch G. Now it's forward, okay? And also in this setting, it's reverse. So we have reverse thrust. Pretty cool. Throttle cuts on. So let's go to monitor mode and see which condition's forward. That's forward. Or excuse me. That's forward, reverse and reverse, okay? So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into digital switch setup. We're gonna make one setting to get that flipped the right way. So pertaining to switch G, we want position 0 to be normal forward flight mode, then reverse thrust, then we'll do pilot fatigue, because this is an EDF jet, okay? So that's minus 100. That'll give us conventional forward thrust. Okay, then we want this one to be plus 100. That's gonna give us controllable reverse thrust based on the stick position. Then also this one is going to be positive 100 as well. You'll notice I have to scroll long ways to get there. Okay, and that has nothing to do with the amplitude of the position, okay? So throttle cuts on, I'm gonna shut that off. Forward thrust is true. Forward thrust. Reverse thrust, and reverse thrust, okay? Now, we're in forward thrust, throttle cuts on. Now what I wanna do is I wanna make one mix, and this mix is gonna be if switch G, or what channel were we on? Channel 5?
Yeah, it's gear.
It's gear. So if gear is, we're gonna mix gear with throttle. Ooh, wait, but only in the condition of switch G being in that position. And we're gonna turn it off here, and we're gonna turn it off here. Okay, so at that point, under that condition, I'm gonna turn off my throttle cut, and I'm gonna move my throttle stick. That hurts my ears. Okay, you'll notice the stick is down. Throttle cuts on, and I am protected by throttle cut. Throttle cuts off, regular forward thrust. Controllable reverse thrust. Pilot fatigue. Throttle cuts on. Pilot fatigue. What is pilot fatigue? Okay, pilot fatigue is a very simple way. Pilot fatigue is something that happens to airplane pilots that get into high stress situations, have a lot of controls to control. For instance, jet pilots or fighter jet pilots in particular experience pilot fatigue because what happens is a lot of the controls that they're being asked to manipulate are happening at the same time. So I came up with that idea. It's not something I came up with. It's actually a thing that happens, okay? So pilot fatigue is when you're landing a plane, especially as a newer pilot, you're like sitting here really focusing on landing, getting the attitude of the aircraft, getting the speed of the aircraft right. And then when you're on the ground, all you have to do is, my throttle cuts on. It's not gonna do it. Full thrust. Because it's very unusual to go full stick on a landing. That's the only time you do it is if you're doing a go around or if you bail on the landing or you're doing a touch and go or whatever. But generally when you land, your stick is down. You are out of throttle at that last touchdown. Also, let's look at the ordnance. So now we've taught you in this video how to build this plane, how to glue things with China glue. We've also showed you how to set up AS3X and safe in your receiver via forward programming. We've showed you how to wire it up. We've talked a little bit about the pros and cons of different flap versus flaperons, but we didn't actually do that on this plane for a variety of reasons. Maybe our next move might be, depending on if this thing earns its stripes, whether we're gonna add flaps or not. I love the way this plane looks. I love the F-15. It's usually a good flying platform, but I gotta say, it has fixed gear. So that's one drawback for somebody like me. I love having retracts and I'm not gonna do a lot of belly landings. But also I wanna point out one thing. If you have this on the bottom, the ordnance on the bottom, having the retracts gone, you'll have a little bit of protection from tipping and spinning the plane. But every single belly lander you have is gonna get a lot of wear and tear on the bottom, no matter how good a pilot you are. No matter how careful you bring it in. And so I love wheels up, wheels down for that reason. Okay, so let's just do a little bit of taxiing. Okay, so now I'm not gonna do pilot fatigue, I'm gonna do controllable thrust reverse. That is pretty cool. So guys, without further ado, I'm getting the 5% warning from the camera crew. If you wanna help support us, because we helped you answer some questions in this video, and you loved watching this beautiful FMS 64mm V2 F-15 get assembled by yours truly with the help of the wonderful camera crew, Megan, my wife of many years, and one of the best in the industry. Then smash the like button, click the bell for notifications when you're subscribing, and come back for more. We have so much content here on Brian Phillips RC, and we really implore you, if you want to support us in other ways that are not buying these amazing products, we suggest that you consider in the order of operations, friends and family through PayPal. There's no fees for that, which is super awesome, unless you're overseas, and then there's some. Donations through PayPal, which we do pay fees on, just so you know. Friends and family, we don't. PayPal donations, we do. Okay, so just keep that in mind if you want your money to stretch as far as possible. And this is all about transparency here on Brian Phillips RC. Then we have Patreon, which carries a little bit higher fees than PayPal, even the donations. And then the members on YouTube. Okay, there are gonna be some plan benefits with membership, and over here on Patreon, we specifically don't give benefits. The benefits are helping to support what we're already doing here, and we very much appreciate you guys. And yes, there have been some people that have been supporting us for a long time. So we really appreciate you guys. I would call you out by name, but I specifically don't do that unless I ask for permission. I didn't ask for permission, so I'm not gonna do it. So that being said, there's many ways to support us, but the biggest and most huge way is to buy the amazing products that we review on this channel. If you don't think this is an amazing product, please don't buy this one, but buy something that you do like, or you do like, or you do like, or you did like, and we will help you decide between them so that you can get a little bit more value extracted out of this ecosystem here on Brian Phillips RC. Also, special thanks to you guys that work with us, all you affiliates out there that are sending us planes and keeping our pipeline full of goodies so that we can bring them to our audience here on Brian Phillips RC. We appreciate you guys. We beat you up and you know it, and we point out every lack of LED like you have on this plane and every little nook and cranny that we see that's out of place. And we appreciate you tolerating that, because at the end of the day, we serve our audience and not necessarily you, even though we like working with you, and you put out some pretty amazing products like this F-15. They're still imperfect. And But the best way you can help support us is just buy these amazing aircraft. It's the best way for us to bring value to these manufacturers, hobby shops, mom and pop shops that we work with that send airplanes for us to review, and other products, sometimes not airplanes. And what happens is then you win, you get the product that you thought you were getting, because now you know that it doesn't have LEDs, or there might be some minor cosmetic flaws here and there that we point out. And you also know that you need to get glue, and you also know how to put it together, and the fact that there isn't a reflex in this versus the one that you thought might have it. And all those questions get answered. So we bring value to them by making sure that your order is going to be a good order. And we also bring value to you so that you know what you're getting. And the big thing that we bring for brand new pilots and returning pilots is we help get you up to speed on the technology. This is one of the most expensive and useful tools that you're going to have when you're a beginner pilot. And believe me, the Spectrum product line is cheap compared to some of the higher level stuff. So it's not cheap compared to the garbage you can get out there. And there is some reasonably good stuff that's alternative to this, but we have found that Spectrum is considerably easier to work with. And that's why we're using them today. And that's why when you go to the flying field, you're gonna see a couple of guys with Futaba, and maybe one guy every 6 months that's got some JR receiver or transmitter set up, or some jetty. And of course they have all the toys you want too. But at the end of the day, the average pilot is gonna be into the Spectrum stuff, because that's where everybody is going with their transmitter receivers. Plus DSMX is huge, and it also works good in big environments with big fly-ins and lots of different people, because DSMX have some of the best spread Spectrum technology, so you don't have a lot of crosstalk and interruptions there. But at the end of the day, we want to help you to get back up to speed if you're coming back. We want to help you to not trip over yourself and your initial ideas when you're a brand new pilot of, I'm going to get this because I like this J11.
Yeah.
Don't do that. You will ruin a $700 investment. And when I say 700, it'll be 700 plus a $200 battery. Okay, and you're gonna crash it. It's gonna be gone like that. Now, not as quick as doing a kit and blowing it up in 1,000 pieces like it used to be for you returning people. You remember what I'm talking about. Back when you built that SIG Eaglet and you accidentally turned off the transmitter and it crashed, and then you had a motor that was destroyed, and you had a whole balsa wood aircraft that was destroyed. The difference is you could technically rebuild that from scratch in a lot of cases. Nowadays, you get a lot more technology squeezed in, but it's on cheaper materials like foam, okay? There's carbon fiber and composite materials, fiberglass, and all that good stuff. And we're gonna bring all that to your attention as we work through these builds so that you understand the value equation. Is this gonna look beautiful? Absolutely. Is it gonna be as high quality as a balsa wood airplane? Probably not. But the thing is, it's also coming at a lower price comparatively on 2023 pricing, or whatever year you're watching this. Don't compare to 1970s pricing, because that's not the way it's going to be, or the 2000 pricing, or the 2019 pricing. You know, because everything has changed so much after COVID. So just keep in mind, compare this apples to apples. In today's day and age, what's it going to cost for a balsa wood airplane? A lot more. Okay, because labor costs have gone up a lot in China. That's where a lot of the stuff gets made. Labor costs in the United States have gone through the roof. So the stuff that's made stateside is incredibly expensive. Almost nobody buys it because it's so expensive. In fact, the Chinese labor is kind of expensive. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring you an overview of the quality of product, build, workmanship, all that stuff, and you're gonna reward us with small commissions through them. You don't pay it, they pay it. You get to take advantage of any bonus programs they have. You get to take, credit card miles, whatever it is, points or cash back, all that stuff. And what happens is they just know that you followed our link to get there, and then they reward us with that small commission. So at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that everybody is winning at the same time. If you don't feel like you're going to win when you order from our link, don't order from our link. Order something else through one of our other links. And we say that from the best place possible. We want you guys to win, but we also want to win with you. Don't forget, don't cut us out if we helped you out. And that's all we ask. So at the end of the day, buy the beautiful planes, buy the wonderful receivers, buy the batteries, and we will win together. And also, I'm gonna say, FMS makes a good plane. They make a lot of the planes for a lot of the other manufacturers that we work with too. So we know that they're making a solid platform from which to draw our wonderful experience. But at the end of the day, if you don't know how to set it up, it could be the best plane in the world and it's gonna end up in a million little foam balls, okay? We're gonna help you avoid it if you're new. By the way, speaking to new pilots specifically on this F-15 before I wrap things up, which I thought I was doing, this plane is supposed to be a good beginner EDF, meaning electric ducted fan. If you're just returning to the hobby and you just need something to wet your whistle, kind of get your feet under you as you adapt to the new technologies that are really good and a lot better. By the way, I have 160 plus planes in here, okay? You could not do that with crystals. You would have had to have crystal sets for every one of them. You would have been $100 out the door just on a crystal set. And you would have had 100 times 100 is how much? $10,000, okay? For 100 planes, okay? That's a lot of money in crystals. Now, of course, you could share them and all that, but nobody does it, okay? This plane, you can get the plane for almost that much. Isn't that crazy if you really think about it? And the technology that's squeezed in here is amazing. And if you're not taking advantage and if you're just going out and downloading model profiles, stop doing that. Learn the technology, get good at it, and then exploit it in the next plane. Even if we're not involved in that equation, we want you to get the most out of this hobby, and that's what we do on Brian Phillips RC. So hopefully you've seen that and you will understand that for future reference. So if you're a brand new pilot and you want to fly this, remember, this is probably 2 or 3 deep into your experience minimum. EDFs tend to be a little bit harder to fly because they're a little bit harder to land because it takes longer to get throttle when you're ready to fly as opposed to a tractor prop driven plane that's being pulled like a tractor or being pushed with a pusher prop. Like over here, we've got some, different choices that are all prop driven except for that Viper over there. That is an EDF driven plane. So we'll help you decide what's gonna keep you from making bad decisions where you have a bad outcome. Same with you returning people. We have lots of people that are coming back to the hobby. We're gonna help you get up to speed, make some good decisions. And then once you're launched out there and you've got a little bit behind you, you may not need any more help, but we'll still appreciate your patronage if you come back and watch once in a while. Did I miss anything? Okay guys, sorry about the audio quality. We lost our battery at the last second because I can't shut up. And we appreciate you staying tuned because there will be another opportunity for me to not shut up soon. Thanks for watching.